Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids. Royal Wave. And welcome. Pardon?
I forgot, yeah, the king's here. So the queen must be present. So.
Welcome to the Eager Beaver Morning Show, the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Monday, May 27th, 2025, and this is episode 656. And it is a gorgeous day, as you can tell by the light coming through the window here at the Beaver Lodge. I am your host, your Royale with cheese, Queen Beaver. And with me, as always, is my loyal and very, very trusted attendant, Mr. Grizzly. Actually, Sir Grizzly of the Bear.
Thank you.
Yes, we have to confer. We have to use full titles today. All right. Given that I can't balance this with my hands anymore, this has got to go, and there goes my hair.
I am a meat puppet.
There you go. I saw the comments, Kits and Cubs, saying that I did not put my crown on yesterday. And, well, yesterday they were arriving. I did not want to upstage.
Yes, you can't do that.
Yes, you can't do that.
Can't.
But today, totally appropriate.
Upstage royal, they remove your head from your body.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yes.
At least they used to.
Yes.
When I did the tour of the Tower of London, they talked about it.
Yes. So, yes, Queen Game respects Queen Game. So, Mr. Grizzly, a big thank you goes to our Royale founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Mr. Grizzly, looking very, very, very patriotic in bright red today. How is your mental health today, sir?
Well, the bright red brings out the rosacea in my face. And hopefully, I had to go to the pharmacy yesterday to pick up a script for my brain, and I said, "Can I get a renewal on the tetracycline because the rosacea is coming back with a vengeance, and it's painful and unsightly." And yeah, she's like, "Yeah, we'll get on that." So hopefully that'll be ready today, and I can start the regime of tetracycline to clear up my skin and take away the pain because rosacea is painful.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, it's only painful if, like, you do this, it's like, oh shit.
Okay.
On its own, it's not painful, but throughout the day, you touch your face something like 400 times a day.
Yeah.
So, and you don't even realize it's like, it's like hitting a nerve ending almost.
Yeah.
It's not like shingles, which is nerve endings coming to the surface, and,
right.
and that's painful. Just period. Just sitting there doing nothing. You'll be noon. It's like jolts of electricity going through your body. So I've only had one bout with shingles, thankfully, and it was so mild. The doctor's like, "I'm not even going to give you Valtrex. Just here's some painkillers.
Hmm.
I'm like, and what are they? He goes, it's Aleve. I'm like, well, shit, I can get that anywhere. He goes,
Right.
that's all you need, man. That's all you need. I go,
Oh,
so yeah.
okay. Interesting. Yeah, a little
Yes,
pain.
that's right. Saucy sea witch. It can burn and dry your face, and it does do both.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. There's times when it's just like burning. It's not pleasant.
Jeez, I did not know that at all.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh.
It's genetic. It's well, it, years ago, I was talking to somebody. I said, "Yeah, I had a bout with shingles," and he says, "Oh yeah, my friend gets that frequently. He plays around a lot." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Well, it's an STD, isn't it?" I'm like, "No, it's not." He goes, "It isn't?" He goes, "I thought it was a type of herpes." I go, "Yeah, it's called herpes zoster, and it's from the chicken pox virus. If you've ever had chicken pox, guess what? That virus remains in your body
Right.
until you're buried or cremated, whichever the case may be, but it's there until you die, and it sits at the base of your spine. And during times when stressful times, or not even stressful times, various things can bring out a bout of shingles." He's like, "Oh, so I have it too." I go, "If you've had chicken pox, congratulations, you have shingles. It just whether it develops or not."
Exactly.
Same thing with cancer. We all have the genetic code in our body. Whether it turns cancerous or not is another question.
Right. Exactly.
But we all have the same cells.
Hmm. So, little pain on my end too today. Foot bothering me a little more.
Mm.
Really interesting because over the course of the weekend, I had it elevated a lot and some ice for the swelling. And at one point, the swelling went down enough that my foot actually looked normal like the other one. And
Mhm.
I thought, okay, I finally got the swelling down. The next day it was all back. It was like because my leg was more down than up. So elevated again yesterday, but it's this the swelling and the break seem to be at the same spot.
Mm.
So, and then yesterday I've been sleeping with the boot on most of the time to try and keep the foot stable. And I concocted something yesterday where I can like put my foot up and like keep it like squeezed in something. So I just tried to take the boot off for a little bit because it was just the underneath of my foot is hurting too now with the pressure on it because like it's just a flat boot, right? It's not molded to your foot in any way. So, and this morning, around 4 o'clock in the morning, that proved to be a mistake.
Oh.
So, yes, because when I have the boot, there's like more room, and when I put stuff to keep it lodged, it does keep lodged. But my foot, again, having been a dancer, also has outturns. So, and if it outturns this way and the brake's there, it kind of puts pressure. Or if it outturns this way, it pulls pressure. So, yeah, around 3:30 in the morning, I was like, oh, okay, put the foot back on. I just needed to let that foot breathe, man. It's hot in here.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially when you got the air thing pumped up, because I got like I remember when like Reebok pumps came in and everybody was like, "Oh my god, that's so cool." Well, the Aircast has this pump thing. If you've never had one on the side, there are these little bags that pump with air, and then it conforms to your foot to apply some constriction to it, and to keep it stable so it doesn't flip and you don't hurt things more. But after a while, after like 4 or 5 hours when it's a hot day and when it's really hot in that Aircast, you just wanna I mean, you have the luxury of taking it off, but you still can't move your foot, which is hard to do once you have the Aircast off, to not
Yes,
move
no
your
doubt.
foot. Anyway, so it's like you get a little bit of relief one way, and then you bring yourself more pain the other way. So, I'm on, I'm, uh, I'm on the drugs right now, the Tylenol and the Advil at the same time because I am a wild party.
Rah, rah, ole. There's a cultural reference for you. If you were around in the early 90s, you would remember Kim Mitchell.
Do, 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 do.
And the video was shot at Lansdowne Park on a Canada Day
Ah,
show, and if you look closely, you'll see me for a split second back when I had hair.
oh, really?
Yeah, I'm in the audience there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool,
Well,
cool.
here's the funny part. I had backstage passes, so I spent a good chunk of the day backstage hanging out with the bands, and then I went out to see Kim Mitchell play live. I just went onto the field, right? But yeah, it was cool. I got to meet Colin James and Jeff Healey and The Pursuit of Happiness and Honeymoon Suite. I hung out with all of them, had beers with them. And Jeff Healey was an absolute sweetheart of a man. An absolute sweetheart of a man. We
had a
lost
great
a very
reputation.
gentle soul when he passed away.
Yeah.
He was
had
just
a great reputation.
Oh yeah, nobody ever said a bad thing about the
Yeah.
man. Like literally, nobody ever said a bad thing about him. He was just a good guy.
And would help anyone, from what I hear. When I hear
Yeah, he
people
did.
talking about their influences back in the day, would help anyone.
Well, he influenced me to get more into jazz because he had thousands of jazz records that his grandfather had been collecting for decades, and he learned about jazz from his grandfather. I learned about jazz from Jeff Healey, and then got into it more on my own. He used to have a jazz show on CIUT, which is a University of Toronto radio show.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Oh, he had thousands of jazz records, and many of them were 78s, right?
Ooh.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Then he's serious.
Literally, they were printed on wax, right?
Yeah.
Well, wasn't wax for 78s. The old cylinders were wax. The 78s were a shellac, which if you dropped them, they would shatter instantly because they weren't vinyl.
True.
Yeah.
True. Oh, man. Gee. God, all those bands.
Yeah. It was a good day.
Amazing.
Good time.
Colin James, amazing. I mean, Colin James is still touring and doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Pursuit of Happiness. I'm an adult now.
Yeah, it was right around that time when that song was still quite popular. Right? So yeah,
love that song. Yeah,
Will Berg, he's from Edmonton, if memory serves.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, gee, it's like you mentioned Edmonton, and Prime Minister McCartney's there. You mentioned Lansdowne Park, and King and Queen were there. So it's like,
yesterday there was
lots of shout outs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, interesting.
And who was in the face-off circle?
Chris
Phillips.
Chris Phillips, yes, that's true.
Former Ottawa senator.
Yes.
I'd say my buddy, but I've met Chris a number of times. His wife and I used to work together. And whenever I bump into him, it's like, hey, how's it going, Aaron? Good to see you. And every time I bump into him, he's like, oh, hi, my name's Chris. I'm like, yes, we've met before. He's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, dude.
You meet more people know you than you know people.
Yes.
Right.
I'm not offended.
It's weird.
And he's retired from hockey, but he's still like an ambassador for the Sens, and people in the Ottawa Valley know who Chris Phillips is. So the Big Rig, Big Rig beer. They call him the Big Rig because he's a very big man. He's just a big dude. He's not like 7 foot tall or anything, but I think he's about 6'3", 6'4", but he's just
wide
and thick and large. And he's a big man. And a nice fella. I think he's from the prairies, if memory serves.
Oh.
Chris Phillips? I think he's from the prairies.
Look
that up. He was from Saskatchewan.
Interesting.
Let's see here. Where was he born? Calgary. He's from Calgary.
There you go.
There you go. I knew he was from out west. I just, for some reason, I was thinking Saskatchewan. But no, that's Chris Neal was from Saskatchewan.
So lots of love here for Jeff Healey in the chat this morning.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. God, what a
sweetheart of a guy. Absolute sweetheart.
And then just take that out. Just the sheer musicianship. Like, come on.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Come on.
And everybody who saw him play were like the time he jammed with Stevie Ray Vaughan, it was something to witness, man. Something to witness. If you can find it on YouTube, and you can see some of his first television appearance on smaller sort of regional talk shows.
Right.
And they're like, they didn't know much about him. They had a little bio written up, and they bring him on, and he'd come out and he'd sit down and play. You know, he played with the guitar on his lap, and every musician, everybody in the audience, every time was like, what the hell did I just see?
Right?
My buddy did a show with him once at Barrymore's. My buddy used to be the sound engineer at Barrymore's a long time ago. And this is when Jeff was first starting out. And he says, so we get up and we're doing the sound check. And Jeff has his bass player and drummer were brothers. And the bass player, he'd say, okay, walk me around the stage. So he'd go, here's your seat. He'd get up out of his seat and he'd walk him right to the edge of the stage. Then he'd walk him to the left, walk him to the right, walk him back to his seat. And Jeff would have it memorized. How many steps to the edge of the stage?
Right.
He says, the chair does not move from this location if it does. So he'd get up. And this is a man who was completely blind, 100% had zero vision. He'd get up and he'd walk right to the edge of the stage. And it looked like he was going to fall off. He knew exactly where he was. right? But it was showmanship. And he'd be just wailing on that guitar. And people were like, oh shit, he's going to fall. It's like, no, don't. He knows what he's doing. Don't worry about it. He had the whole stage. Every stage he ever played, he would memorize it. How many steps left? How many steps right? How many steps to the dead center? How many steps to the edge?
Yep.
He's just a beautiful man.
I could see the side, like if it was like a Saturday Night Live skit or something like that, like, getting up, walking to the stage, he hears everybody in the audience, goes, woo! He stops like, trust me, I'm a professional.
Professional, yeah. And Amanda Marsha tells a story about how when he basically discovered her, in the sense that he got her into show business and he encouraged her to sing and play. And it was a funny story. She had played at, I'll say, the X in Toronto. There was this big festival that was happening, and she did a set, and then she had to come to Ottawa to perform on Canada Day, and she was sick as a dog.
Mm.
And it's like nauseous sick. She does the show. She gets back in, and she gets back. They gets back to the hotel. Goes up to the hotel room. Goes to lie down, and Jeff's like, you got to come down. You got to come down. You got to come down. You have to come down. So she comes down to the lobby, and there's a big room down there, and literally everybody that was a part of that show was there and cheered her on and handed her champagne. And Jeff Healey says, welcome to showbiz, kid. Yeah, she credits Jeff with encouraging her to sing and perform and play, because she was shy at first. And look, I've heard the diva like comments about Amanda Marshall. I don't care. I don't care. I've seen her play live 4 times, and every single time she blows me away. And we saw her last June, and you'd never seen her live before.
I'd
And she
never
comes
had
out.
the privilege. No.
She comes out and she starts with "Let It Rain"
Oh,
and gets a standing ovation on the first song. There was
Yep.
like 5 standing ovations. People weeping in the audience.
she's phenomenal.
She's amazing.
She's phenomenal. Oh, God. All right, kids and cubs, before we get into it, my heart, it's broken.
Why? Because
The
Ottawa
charge.
lost. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
another overtime.
yeah. Triple overtime.
Ah.
Well, it's they play. I think they play tonight. Do they?
No, that's it.
They're done.
That's it.
Oh,
That
shit.
was 3-1. It's done. The
Oh, I
triple
didn't know.
overtime was the night before. Yeah, they played yesterday. I think it went into overtime as well, but yeah, they lost.
Oh, they lost
And it's
last
like,
night. I didn't know they played last night.
and
See,
it's like, then I jinxed them again because in that second match, when the Frost scored that goal with 36 seconds left, I said, that's the series right there. In my head, it's like, if you have a chance to go up 2-0 and you take a silly penalty, well, not so much a silly penalty, I shouldn't say that, but you take a penalty with 36 seconds left and the other team scores to tie it up and then wins the game, that can psychologically break a team. The Frost just went 3 in a row.
Well,
that point on.
It's a best of 5, not a best of 7.
I know.
So,
it's like, I shouldn't have even had the thought.
Mm.
There goes the series. But I had the feeling that goal was the series, and it turns out it was. I mean, it's not like the Ottawa Charge gave up.
I don't know.
Both the next 2 matches went into overtime. I mean, one went to triple overtime, but it's just like, it was like the Frost just could not be denied after that. It was like, damn. And that's why you got to play the full game, kids. Oh, man. As we learned also with Canada and Denmark, right?
Yeah.
You got to play the full game. Canada played great for everything except for the last 4 minutes. And Denmark.
Well, of course, you'll have people say, "Well, yeah, you can't have a Canadian team winning." What?
God. Okay. But there's always next year, and it still remains true that the Ottawa Charge is the first Canadian team to make a PWHL final.
Correct.
So there you go. Let's go, team. And there's going to be expansion draft next year with Seattle and this year with Seattle and Vancouver coming on for next season. So there'll be a lot of change up in the teams. But it was just like, oh, you're breaking my heart. You're breaking my heart. But for those who still have the hockey in them, Canada's team, the Oilers, tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, trying to take a 3-1 lead on Dallas.
I think they will. They're at home tonight. Are they at home tonight? Yeah.
I think so. Yeah, game 5, yeah.
Yeah. Game 5. They're at home tonight.
Oh,
So
please, go Oilers.
are they at home?
Go
I don't even
Oilers.
know.
Go Oilers.
Whatever.
I got my fingers, my eyes, my toes, my arms, and my legs crossed. So let's go. Also, if you're a tennis fan, despite having terrible draws, both Denis Shapovalov and Gabriel Diallo yesterday won their matches. Gabriel Diallo with a big upset. He's 54th in the world, taking out the number 18 player, Cerundolo. So only his third time in his career that he defeated a top 20 player, the first time doing it at a Grand Slam. So there you go. And it's in only his fourth Grand Slam match ever. So really big victory for him. Goes on to the second round. Denis Shapovalov was handling Pedro Martinez, also very close in ranking to him. Like, I think Shapovalov went in ranked 31st and Martinez was 47. But handled Pedro Martinez in straight sets. And got a bagel in one of them. So
A bagel?
yeah, 6-0. That's what they call it. Like if
sorry.
you win 6-0, 6-0, they call it double bagel in tennis.
In Canada, we always say donut.
Yep.
What was the score? 6 donut.
Yep. So both of them advanced to the second round, along with Victoria Mboko, and Felix Auger-Aliassime plays his first round match today. So, but those are two big wins for those Canadians there. Shapovalov had been in a bit of a slump as well, so I think he'd won only three of his last 9 or 12 matches or something up until yesterday. So, a lot of the big players on the Canadian team have been in a slump this year. They started off really well, but in a bit of a slump. While the next gen is just tearing it up. So hopefully this will be a turnaround for some of the bigger players on our team. But really great performance. Also found out for those of you who are doubles fans and Gabriela Dabrowski fans, it seems that there must have been some type of injury or something because even though they're the number 1 or number 2 ranked team in the world, they are not entered at all in the draw this year.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems that there must have been one of the duo must be out with an injury of some kind because they are not there. Gabriel Diallo, for the first time as well, will be playing in a Grand Slam doubles tournament. He's the only Canadian in the doubles tournament listed so far, and the only Canadian woman in the doubles tournament for women is Leila Fernandez. She'll be playing with Puntintseva from Kazakhstan as her partner in that one. And the mixed doubles draw isn't out yet, so we don't know if there are any Canadians in there yet. But lower participation in the doubles as well for the Canadian team. So it's hopefully some of the singles players get to go a long way, or else it could be a pretty short tournament for Canadian tennis fans who are cheering for Canadians. But so far, so good. So far, so good. Those are, especially Diallo, that's a huge win. It's like if you could take out a top 20 and add a Grand Slam, you're doing something right. You're doing something right. All right. The news. First things first. We had to choose a speaker yesterday.
Yes.
And something really weird happened. Because what I said yesterday? I was reading out the names, and there were 8 names, and I thought, well, everything I'm reading now says 7. So I couldn't figure out who dropped out. It was John Nater, the name that I recognized the least on the list. Dropped out. He was one of the 2 conservatives on the list. Then later that morning, we found out that Chris D'Entremont, who was the deputy speaker, because there are 2 deputy speakers, there was one from the Conservatives and one from the NDP last time around, along with Greg Fergus, he also removed his name from consideration on the list. So there were only 6 Liberals to consider, which that was really inconvenient for, look at the Liberals, they're just going to pick another Liberal again narrative that the Conservatives were trying to spin, because how do you not pick another Liberal if all the Conservatives that entered the race pull out?
Yeah, well, don't let logic and reason get in the way of a good conspiracy theory, right?
Jeez. So the NDP didn't put up a candidate because they only have 7. I guess they didn't want to lose a vote.
And
Elizabeth
they don't
May
have
didn't
official
go up.
party status. So.
Exactly. And Elizabeth May didn't go up because she was only one because she didn't have a second MP there. And she said, well, if I'm speaker, okay, that gives me lots of time, but then I can't represent the Greens.
Right.
Right. So, and she's trying to revive the party somewhat. So, I mean, she's got to sit there. So there were only Liberals to consider on a preferential ballot. So it's just, I don't know what's wrong with the Conservative Party, but clearly they sent the message out to the minions to start crying about the fact that, the Liberals will pick one of their own like this, and then we won't have any Conservatives. And I thought really was a ploy to try to force the Liberals' hand to make D'Entremont the Speaker. But it seems the Conservatives too, even though they have 144 MPs, didn't want to lose one vote because I guess they think that one vote will make the difference between being able to take down the government at will. They still need the help of two parties.
Mhm.
So I don't know what the thinking on that was. It just seems like a just big disorganized mess because the Conservatives would have lost nothing for had they even left the two in and they had not won, then they could have tried to run with their narrative, but they pulled them both out. So there's some fear and panic in that party if they felt like with 144 MPs, they couldn't even afford to lose one vote. To be able to have the control of the speakership,
Mhm.
where, if you wanted to be a shit disturber, you could. But apparently they passed on that opportunity. So there were 6 Liberals left, and the person who was chosen was Frank Scarpellegia, which is the person on whom I had spent a bit the most time yesterday, not saying too much, but that I actually went to look in on him because I knew that, he was even though he's not a name that's big on the mainstream, if you were paying attention, you would hear his name a lot over the past couple of years.
Yeah, because I'm not entirely familiar with him, but
Yeah, but he's been an MP since 2004.
here he is being
right?
Dragged to the speaker's
Yes.
chair.
Yes. So he's a Quebec-based MP, Montreal area. Has been an MP for a significant long time. And if people are wondering in terms of process, well, how does the Speaker of the House get chosen if the House of Commons is supposed to resume and there is no Speaker of the House?
Mhm.
Well, there's a little trick. It seems that in the case for selecting the Speaker of the House, it is the member of the House that has been there the longest that presides the ceremony. So essentially, the dean of the MPs. So that person made sure that they took care of the whole vote and whatnot and ran things. And it was a preferential vote. And he definitely won that. So he will be the speaker. I'm not sure if there were any deputies selected this time. And if they do come from different parties or they come from the same list, because if they come from the same list, that would mean that the two deputies are also Liberal MPs. But in any case, according to the CBC, this is Peter Zamonjic, he says, Liberal MP Francis Scarpellegia, who represents the Quebec riding of Lac-Saint-Louis, is the new Speaker of the House of Commons and will preside over what Prime Minister Mark Carney has told his caucus will be a, quote, very, very busy few weeks and months ahead. The Speaker is an MP chosen in a secret ranked ballot by other MPs to preside over the business of the House of Commons, act as an impartial arbiter of House proceedings, and maintain order during debates. While the Speaker is elected to Parliament as a member of a party, they do not sit in any party caucus because the role is considered nonpartisan. Quote, I will remind members that we are at the beginning of a mandate in the selfish hope that you will afford me a little grace period, he said after being ushered to the Speaker's chair by Carney and interim opposition leader Andrew Scheer, who was a Speaker himself. One point. Quote, once again, thank you for your confidence. I have few words because, well, we all have things we want to accomplish and we have been away. Thank you, colleagues. Carney stood in the House for the first time on Monday, thanking those who voted for him personally and all members of the House Commons before going on to congratulate Scarpellegia. Quote, I have much to learn from the members of this great House, Carney said. I will make mistakes. I have no doubt that you will call them out for good reason, because this House has rules, it has traditions, and it's on those traditions that our Athenian democracy is founded, he said. Yes, we are Athens, they are Rome, Carney said, referencing Scarpellegia's campaign speech from the speakership earlier in the day. We will prevail. We are in the golden age of Athens. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You have my support. Now, if people are wondering why it is that the Speaker of the House is often dragged to the chair, you see them dragging,
Mhm.
speakers like resisting, no, no, no. Well, upon the passage of the motion, the speaker-elect is expected to show reluctance at being
Mhm.
chosen. They are customarily dragged unwillingly to the bench. The custom has its roots in the speaker's original function of communicating the commons, so the people's opinion, to the monarch. Historically, the speaker representing the House to the monarch potentially faced the monarch's anger and therefore required some persuasion to accept the post. In other words, kill the messenger.
Mhm.
I am bringing you the words of the commons. They are words you will not like. Please do not behead me.
Well, that was it. That was the concern, that they would be
Exactly.
summarily executed if they pissed off the monarch, and that did happen a number of times.
Well, see,
A long time ago, a
yes.
very long time ago.
Well, it did and it didn't. Contrary to an often repeated claim, no speaker has ever been executed for his actions in that
Right.
capacity. But 6 former speakers were executed between 1471 and 1535, sometimes many years after their terms.
Correct.
And for 5 of these, the execution was due to behavior in subsequent offices.
Yeah, so it's yes,
So it
it's
was the threat of, but
the threat of, and it only really ever happened, like I said, long after they were out of that position.
yes, when they were not doing anything having to do so. No actual speaker has any reason to actually be reluctant because no speaker was actually beheaded when they were speaker.
Correct. Speaking of speaker, former Speaker of the House, Greg Fergus, you know he was reelected, eh?
Yes, as an
And
MP, yes.
he was reelected as an MP in his riding, but look at his vote count, his percentage. So 31,978, 62.11%, and eligible voters 74,657. Let's scroll down to the previous election when he received 52.5% of the vote, and there were 78,000 registered voters. So in 2025, he actually gained what's the percentage? 10% jump with 4,000 less voters. He's a popular MP in that riding.
Yep, I guess they thought the citizens of his riding determined that he did indeed do a good job as speaker. Because, I mean, he wasn't debating policy.
No, not a speaker.
Right?
No.
Not a speaker.
You're just there to control.
However, Greg Fergus was, if I remember correctly, brought on as speaker later on in the session because, I can't remember his name now. But the person that was in the seat at the time, that they brought in, that person that everybody thought originally was a war hero.
Right.
Like this, including the conservatives who thought he was a war hero because they got up and clapped too.
And everyone was enthusiastically applauding him except for one man.
Yes, when they all thought he was a war hero.
Yes.
Yes. So
well, I guess technically he was a war hero, just for the wrong side.
Yes, but yeah, like everybody stood up in the House of Commons when he was announced.
Everyone.
Nobody had done their research.
Yes.
So, and nobody picked up on the fact. And they said, well, gee, when they say that guy, for that person in that area in those years, you should know. Well, nobody in that House of Commons knew because nobody stayed seated.
No.
Nobody
Everybody
sat there and
stood
go,
up.
what?
Well, and I
was only
love how
after.
people. I love how people will just say, "Oh, look at all these liberals applauding a Nazi." Did you look? Like everybody in the house was applauding him. No, it was just the liberals. What color is the sky in your world?
It all depends when you start history.
It happened yesterday.
Yes, selective history starting. It's a double gold medal sport at the Conservative Olympics.
Well, it reminds me of that heritage moment. No, I know that word, and that word means this. But Kanata doesn't he mean the village, the people? No, I know what that word, the bishop.
Yep.
No, I know what that word means. I know what that word means, and that is not what it means. I'm like, but that is what it means. So.
Yeah.
Kanata.
So, Parliament, after the speech from the throne is read, will set to resume. Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced while he will take part in his first question period on Wednesday, he will not carry on the tradition set by, well, tradition, I don't know how much tradition it is after one term, but will not continue the practice, we should say, started by his
That's better.
predecessor, Justin Trudeau, to answer all the questions in the House of Commons on Wednesdays, which was a gesture meant to improve accountability within the chamber. Not sure how effective it was.
I don't think it
But,
improved anything.
no.
Improved anything, to be honest.
But he will not be doing that. So there you go. However, there could be, after the speech of the throne is read, opening round of debate on the agenda outlined in the speech on the agendas items outlined in the speech. And but there are a few key items of procedural business to cross off before that can happen. And this is something I did not know happened. I'm learning this today, and I do not know why a certain portion is not happening of it. But it seems that there's always a pro forma introduction of Bill C1, which is an act respecting the administration of oaths of office, which is tabled by the Prime Minister at the start of every new session to reaffirm the rights and privileges of the House of Commons. But for some reason, the act never makes it past first reading. Now, I understand pro forma, you're doing it for form and whatnot, and like this is, but I don't know why it doesn't pass first reading. Why? Why is that the tradition? So hopefully I'll be able to do some research and figure out why that is. But apparently every session starts with that, and then we go ahead. Now, there are other things that can happen before things get really started. So a minister could also introduce on behalf of the government a motion that, quote, the business of supply be considered at the next sitting of the House, which, quote, establishes continuing order of the day for considering the business of supply, which includes, among other measures, the estimates which are expected to be tabled within days and must be approved or alternately rejected on or before June 23rd. So those estimates have already been prepared and they were tabled in the past one. So for them to carry over into this new session, somebody has to table a motion for the business of supply to be considered at the next sitting of the House. So the business of supply that we were doing that got suspended, we have to vote to carry this forward into this session of the House. And if it is approved, then they can continue with the estimates as they are. If it is not approved, then they would have to table the estimates all over again and start the process all over again from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
One would suspect that this motion would pass because the Conservatives have, for some reason, gone on TV, and it seems that the NDP is sort of helping them with that, or the Bloc, demanding that there actually be a spring budget. We absolutely must have a spring budget. It's like, we've got 4 weeks like this. You've got to do the budget now. It's like, but we're not even going to have had the meeting of the NATO group to determine what we're going to do defense-wise extra that we're going to put in the budget. Why would you want a budget that doesn't have that in it?
I don't know most of what's going on in the world right now. I'm just so bizarrely spun out about it all.
But again, like the Conservatives, who were supposed to be really, 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 really good with money, who like screwed up. Their costing screwed up like this. We're seeing Doug Ford's budget, which is a disaster as well. The UCP.
We won't even get into Bill 5.
Yeah. The UCP are running deficits like crazy. Right?
Fiscal responsibility. And my fiscal responsibility is to pad the pockets of myself and my donors.
Right. So
I mean, that's
I don't
the only thing I see them doing.
Yeah. So if the Conservatives don't vote to bring the business of supply forward, kind of makes it impossible to have a budget in the summer like they're demanding. Foolishly demanding, but like they're demanding. So hopefully they'll at least be consistent with themselves and move that forward. But if they wanted to shit disturb, they could block that.
Oh, yes.
Then force the government to start over again. Then see, look at that. It's taking too much time. They could actually engineer that if they decide to screw with the system.
Sorry, I got to check on something and grab a coffee at the same time because the Benadryl just kicked in and I'm like, whoa.
Okay.
I'll be right back.
I know that feeling. Also on the to-do list, filing the necessary paperwork for the format and membership of the Standing Committee on Procedure and House Affairs, which has to be up and running before the membership of other standing committees can be finalized. As for any debate, if it does get started this afternoon, it will begin with what is effectively a brief recap of the speech, which is usually delivered by backbench MP with the governing party caucus, and ends with a motion that opens the floor for a more wide-ranging back and forth that, as per the standing orders, can carry on for a maximum of 6 days, although it typically winds down within 2 or 3 days, depending on whether one or more opposition parties puts forward a proposed amendment. So those are some procedural things that go around. And then, of course, tomorrow, actual debate on motions and stuff like that, and tabling stuff in the House now can start in earnest. But these are all types of procedural and ceremonial and other types of housekeeping things that need to be done before we get started, going in terms of business as a regular sort of daily business. But all these things will be happening today. And of course, the debate on the speech from the throne will be happening after, like it says, could last up to 6 days, usually takes about 2 or 3, unless someone's proposing an amendment. Here again, we could probably see a situation in which the Conservatives, again, for shits and giggles or for delay or tactical purposes, could propose some type of amendment. Again, we only have 4 weeks. So the more of that stuff that the Conservatives do now, the less likely it is that people will get their tax cut.
Well,
So we'll see how
Shocker.
cooperative they are, because they could make life very difficult for the Prime Minister right now, and then have us going all throughout the summer. See, he couldn't get it done. He couldn't get it done. They could be setting up the table for that if they wish to be very disingenuous. With all of this going on, the King and the Queen Consort arriving and all the ceremony and whatnot, we mentioned yesterday that there were a couple of officials in the United States that were in a bit of a snit because of it. I couldn't remember who it was exactly yesterday. Well, turns out it was the ambassador of the United States to Canada. The person who I did tell you seemed to be someone serious that
He's
they
no
sent
Bruce
us.
Heyman now.
Yeah, no Bruce Heyman, it seems, or even the last person that IQ
Yeah.
IQ 45 at the time sent us was pretty good. But the reputation that this person was that he was very good, very solid, and because he had been a state representative in the state of Michigan, border state, that would really be able to handle us.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, not
Deal.
handle us, but deal with us in a manner that
Appropriate
showed that
manner.
they were they were serious about dealing with us. Um, well, apparently, um, at least from his perspective, he's tired of hearing about us uh, not being happy
Yes.
about the 51st state stuff. According to Benjamin Lopez, Stephen, and Catherine Cullen of CBC News, The new U.S. ambassador, the new U.S. ambassador to Canada says he knows the implication of King Charles III's upcoming trip to Ottawa is to push back on the U.S. President Donald Trump's 51st state threats. And he says, quote, there are easier ways to send messages to the American government. Really? Because if there were, don't you think some of them would have landed yet
We've
before
sent
we had
lots
to
of
call the king?
messages. The only one they seem to understand is we're not spending our money in your country.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, the only message Trump will ever understand is one that affects the bottom line. Period.
Exactly.
It's the only thing he cares about is money.
Yep. Quote, we're thrilled that the king will be here, said U.S. Ambassador to Canada Pete Hoekstra in an interview with the CBC's The House. If there's a message in there, there's easier ways to send messages. Just give me a call. Mark Carney can call the president anytime. Hoekstra added that the annexation saga is, quote, over. Quote. And again, you need to sit down for this one, kids. Move on. If the Canadians want to keep talking about it, that's their business. I'm not talking about it. Donald Trump is not talking about it. We've got too much on our plate to move forward because we're all about increasing America's prosperity, safe, and security. And okay, listen here, you asshole. How dare you, and who the hell do you think you are, and where do you get off in any one of these formulations? Like, coming to our media and telling us to move on from something you guys created, and then say that there are easier ways to do this, you can just call us, when that has proven ineffective. Those tariffs are still there. If it was as easy as just picking up the phone and calling you,
It would have happened
there would have
already.
been some resolution,
Mhm.
right? Then, when asked specifically, whether or not he has heard from President Trump that this 51st state is over. Oh, well, that he can't confirm, but, as far as he's concerned, it's over. Can't you tell? You could tell from what happened in the Oval Office. It's like what we can tell from Orange Shitstain is that he never lets anything go. Ever.
No. He'll hold a grudge forever.
I mean, come on. Do you think that there's a coincidence that he's going after Harvard when, gee, which former president that he really doesn't like graduated from Harvard? It's like, come on. This guy doesn't let anything go.
You know the old joke about how when you're at a cocktail party and somebody says, how do you know the people who went to Harvard? Just wait. They'll be sure to tell you about it. When I went to Harvard, it's like, how do you spot the vegan? Yeah, Just wait. They'll tell you all about it.
And here's the thing. Listen, because, I say arsehole, but poor Ambassador Hoekstra. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Even if Donald Trump said himself, hey, Canada, the 51st state stuff, it's over. It's over. I'm going to let it go. We can't trust that he'll remember he said that 5 minutes from now. So I'm sorry, sir, with all the respect that is due to your position. If you're saying it, it's not good enough. It has to come from him. And then again, we can't trust him.
No, he's not trustable.
Say, you don't get to tell us when we have to move on from something you did. I don't know where you thought that those words would land well here.
See, I remember him from somewhere else in the past. I just can't put my finger on what I know him from, because I remember the name Pete Hoekstra.
Oh, my God.
I just can't remember where I know him from or what incidents or issue. But I do remember him. I remember his name. I just can't remember why. That happens when you get older, right? You know that when you get older, you just start forgetting shit.
Well, he was the chair of the Michigan Republican Party. He was the former United States ambassador to the Netherlands as well. He was a U.S. House of Representatives member for the 2nd District. So, again, but I mean, Michigan, a border state, I mean, God, he was probably on TV certain number of times for something.
Oh, yes.
With regard to Canada at some point, right? I mean, Michigan and Minnesota, for all intents and purposes, are honorary Canada.
Well, and you can talk to Michiganders about that, and they'll say, yeah, they feel that way in many instances. And I'm just reading here a story from CBS News about how in Sault Ste. Marie in Michigan, a small city with a thriving economy, that's because visitors from its larger northern sister city in Ontario, Canada, keep the border town's economy humming. Situated on opposite sides of the St. Mary's River, the U.S. Canadian counterparts are connected by the Sault Ste. Marie International Bridge, over which thousands of vehicles pass each month. It's so intertwined, said Linda Hoth, Executive Director of the Sioux Area Consort Convention and Visitors Bureau, who noted that many people have family members on both sides of the U.S.-Canada border. There's no separation between the two communities. So, yeah. Many of them feel like honorary Canadians in many ways. And even our good buddy Jake, your old pal Jake.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think Jake has dual citizenship, does he not?
I'm not sure on that one.
For some reason, I thought he did. Maybe I'm wrong. But Jake can let us know. We haven't talked to him in a bit. We should get in touch with him. We should get him back in.
Yeah.
We should have him on the show to really talk about the experience of somebody directly impacted by the lack of Canadian consumers, Canadian tourists, Canadian travelers, and international travels for that matter. I'd love to get his point of view. And somebody else we should also talk to about that is Environmental Coffee House.
Yes. Very much so. Very much so. So Hoekstra said that the U.S. government will be listening closely to the content of the speech because it is the platform of the ruling party. And then he said, if there's going to be any discussion about the 51st state, it's going to be happening at the Donald Trump Carney level, not at the ambassadorial level, which tells me it's done. If it's going to happen at the Carney Trump level, then it's not done.
Yeah.
If there's to be any. Done means nobody talky about it anymore. Hoekstra said his understanding is that the trade and tariff negotiations are underway between Canada and the United States, but he doesn't know how intense they are to this point. Really weird because he's the ambassador. You think he would be abreast of that. Prime Minister Mark Carney visited Trump in the Oval Office earlier this month, as we met, right? As we all saw. And Hoekstra said after the summit that the US president called on Canadians to send a proposal about the tariffs. Quote, we're waiting, I think, and I believe that the ball's in Canada's court to outline what they would like to do, maybe some proposals and those types of things, the US ambassador added very precisely. Other countries around the world affected by US tariffs have sent their own ideas to the Trump administration, which is pushing to get deals done and has no time for a drawn-out negotiation process, he said. Yes, because trade deals, which are normally very complex and have a lot of legalese, are usually hammered out and negotiated in 2 days. Okay. These people. Oh, my God. So, yeah, apparently the ambassador doesn't like the fact that we called in the king.
Well,
you didn't have to go that far, you know. You didn't have
it's
to
all
call
right.
Mom.
I'm sorry. Are you telling us how to govern?
Yeah.
I don't think you get the right to do that.
Again.
Especially as an ambassador. What the hell, bro?
Yeah. Dude, did you not understand the assignment?
Clearly he doesn't.
Don't make things worse.
Well, I think it's less about him not understanding the assignment and just not giving a shit.
Well,
and
let's
going
put it this.
going to work for his mouth. He's going to be the mouthpiece in Canada for Trump when Trump is not speaking.
Anybody who's ever been in a relationship, when you fucked up, and you go to the person to whom you fucked up, say, oh, just move on already. How does that work out for you?
That's not going to work well.
Now, picture that in international diplomacy.
You need to be humbled. You need to feel shame.
Come on, man. 2 minutes in the box at least. Right?
Well,
2 minutes in the sin bin at least.
When he does things like that, it does not help.
No.
The Canadians, especially, who are paying attention, who have been on the fence about traveling to the U.S. Because some people are like, well, I'm still going to go anyway. But when you hear stuff like that, right now the U.S. tourism industry is facing what experts are calling a perfect storm of challenges. According to data from the World Travel and Tourism Council, America is on track to lose $12.5 billion in travel revenue this year, making it the only country out of 184 analyzed that's projected to see tourism dollars decline in 2025. International visitor spending is expected to fall to less than $169 billion by year's end, a 7% drop from 2024 and a staggering 22% decline from tourism's pre-pandemic peak in 2019. It could take until 2030 for U.S. tourism to bounce back to pre-COVID numbers. That's I think that is being very generous and very hopeful, because as long as Trump is there and he continues to do more damage to the country's reputation internationally, it may never recover. And if it becomes Gilead, as Project 2025 wants it to be, if it goes all the way through with Project 2025, I think you might see a permanent end to international tourism. I mean, I'm sincerely mean that, because right now you have, what was an Australian woman who went to visit her husband in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
They held her for several hours and did 3 cavity searches.
3.
What, the first 2 weren't enough? Let's get a third one in there.
Yeah.
Third time's the charm.
I think there's when it gets to be 3, maybe it's no longer cavity search. Maybe it's another word.
Yes. Perversion. Like, right. Come on, 3 cavity searches. Yeah. It's look, just don't go there right now. Until they are able to, and I say this to the American people, until you guys are able to sort this shit out and get rid of this lunatic and put an adult back in charge, there are millions of us around the world who are not going to venture. And it's a shame, because there's parts of the country I still wanted to see. But chances are very good that it's never going to happen now. I will not set foot in the country while he is in power. I won't. I'm not doing it. I said that during his first term, and I stuck to it. And on this term, I'm even more staunch about it. And the chances of me ever going there again in the future, unless they are able to completely reverse all of the damage that he's done, and that will not happen in the next 10 years. That won't happen in the next 10 years. He is into the first third of his first year of a 4-year term.
Indeed. Indeed. Absolutely. So, yeah. And
Well,
it's
Elaine,
the governors
that's-
there that keep on, like, again, like I said, trying to throw us with tourist incentives. It's like, we don't guarantee, you can't guarantee we can get home.
That's right.
It's like, until you can guarantee our safety, sorry, we're not coming.
Look, I might be able to safely go and return. I say might. I'm not going to erase my phone, and I'm not bringing a burner. So if you see negative commentary about Donald Trump on my phone and refuse me entrance, that's fine. Again, that's a hypothetical because I'm not going. I'm not. It's as simple as that.
Indeed. Indeed. All right. So, with all of that, kids and cubs, let's talk about the bling.
Bling.
The Royals did arrive. Of course, lots of coverage wall to wall from that, particularly from CBC, but all over, because even though a lot of us do roll our eyes when the monarchy comes to town, it still is a big deal because we are a constitutional monarchy, and it's one of those few moments of pomp and pageantry and stuff that we have. So, if you, I don't know if you have the video set up, Mr. Grizzly?
I do. Let's go.
So CBC had a little clip about Charles specifically visiting Canada through the years.
For Charles's first visit to Canada as monarch, but over his 64 years as Prince of Wales, he visited often. From young man to husband to father and now to monarch, Canadians have been welcoming Charles for decades.
During his offhand exchanges with a number of curious youngsters, Charles demonstrated his now characteristic poise.
His early visits in the 70s as Prince of Wales were action-packed, hanging out with Canadian teens, diving into Arctic waters.
Prince Charles got a real taste of the North.
Even tasting seal meat. By 1977, he was standing in for the Queen at the 100th anniversary reenactment of the signing of Treaty 7 in Alberta.
I wish you all the very best of luck for the next 100 years.
His cross-country tour in the 80s drew huge crowds with Princess Diana by his side.
And I have an opportunity to introduce my wife to a large number of Canadians.
Diana's magnetism was clear, but not everyone showed up just for her. The 90s saw another addition. The young princes, William and Harry, joined him on 3 different visits, the last just after Diana's death. Then in 2009, Charles arrived in a different era with Camilla now by his side.
How deeply touched my wife and I are by your most generous words of welcome.
She too has quickly become a familiar face to Canadians, joining every visit since, including today's.
So there you go. As we mentioned yesterday, this is his 20th visit to Canada, even though it's his first as the monarch himself. Now, there are some parallels between his first visit to Canada in 1970, according to royal historian Carolyn Harris, because at that time, the visit was also marked by issues related to sovereignty. Mr. Grizzly, if you will.
1 second, sir. Let me just bring this back up here, and I'll hit the play button in a sec, because we do have this. Was 1970 was this visit, I believe?
Yes.
happening then that made that matter?
Well, Prince Charles's very first visit to Canada was in 1970 with his parents, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip, and his sister, Princess Anne. And they traveled to Manitoba and the Northwest Territories, and it was the 100th anniversary of the province of Manitoba, the creation of the Northwest Territories. So there was an anniversary that they were marking by being there, but they traveled to Arctic towns that had never received a royal visit before, such as Tuktoyaktuk and what is now Iqaluit. And that sent a very strong message about Canada's sovereignty over the Arctic during the Cold War, as there were concerns about how sparsely populated the Arctic was at that time with Cold War tensions. So having a big, high-profile royal visit with the king, with the future king, his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, Prince Philip, Princess Anne, that sent a very strong message of Canadian sovereignty. And there were headlines around the world. The New York Times reported that Queen Elizabeth II was meeting.
So, a little bit of controversy back then, too. Very important to make a statement about sovereignty back then. So, this is not territory that the royal family and this particular monarch is unfamiliar with as well.
No.
Yes. Historically, in 1939, on a cross-country tour, King George VI did make a stop at Parliament to give royal assent to certain bills in person, but it wasn't until 1957 that a monarch read the first speech from the throne, which was Queen Elizabeth. She did it again in 1977 for her Silver Jubilee tour, and today will be the third such time that this happens in Canadian history. And as we've noted before, the first time it is being read by a king and not a queen. Now, of course, a lot of people are looking at this and why are we doing all this for? It's just symbols and all that kind of stuff. Well, symbolism is important. There's a reason why we have symbols and traditions and pomp and pageantry and all that type of stuff. So Margaret Macmillan, who is a member of the Order of Merit, for those who don't know, the Order of Canada has certain levels and there are higher levels, and the Order of Merit is a higher level. And she was just received it, I think, in the last round because she was appointed to it by King Charles III, and he hasn't been king for that long. But she's a historian and a professor at the University of Oxford and the University of Toronto, and she has a little bit of things to say about what the importance of symbolism is, and a take on how it is that, well, let's just put it this way, an interesting bit of attitude from a historian of her caliber.
And can we shift to sort of this moment, because many people have suggested, you know, we're in a world that is rapidly shifting, a changing world order. You've studied the 20th century intimately. I'm curious what you make of this period that we're in.
I think we're living through a time of great change. I don't think we know where it's going to go, but clearly things will not go back to being the way they were. We're seeing a world order which was built up during the Second World War, established at the end of the Second World War, which has served us fairly well with international institutions and a fair degree of international cooperation. We've had our problems, goodness knows. And I think that's now changing, and we're not sure what it's going to look like. We're seeing the United States, which used to be our friend, which is not behaving in a friendly way at the moment.
As we speak, Margaret, we're watching pictures of students get to the fence at the airport. Nothing happens by happenstance here. They've been invited to greet the king. And I'm curious, you know, what do you read into the king coming to Canada to read the speech from the throne right now?
Oh, I think the timing is crucial. I mean, symbols matter in life. We know that. We have ceremonial occasions in our own lives, weddings, funerals, christenings, and I think they matter in international relations. And the fact that the king is coming to open Parliament at a time when Canadian sovereignty is under threat, I think is a symbol. And I think it's a gesture. Gestures can matter. And I hope it will be noticed in the White House, south of the border, that Canada is somehow different. It's not the 51st state of the United States. It has its own traditions, and this is a symbol of those traditions.
If there's a prospect of reward here, does that also mean there's a potential for risk?
There's always risk in any sort of international relations. And I suppose the risk for us is that it might annoy President Trump. He might see us perhaps as in some way defying him. But I think we've already shown quite clearly that we don't want to be the 51st state. And it's quite proper and right that the king should come to Canada. It's still part of the Commonwealth. It still recognizes the monarch. And so I think if it causes annoyance, really my view is that's too bad.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. Margaret.
Wow.
We saw that Adrian Arsenault didn't really know what to do with that one, eh?
Yeah, that was okay.
There's something about a woman of a certain age
Not
who
given.
is highly educated and has incredible poise, looking straight into a camera and saying, "That sounds like a you problem."
Mm-hmm.
That does it for me.
Yeah,
It really does. Just plainly, matter of factly, no drama. Just
Not my concern. Yeah. Not my problem. I don't give a shit.
be mad.
I'll see what I care.
For that,
I don't care.
think. There's like, damn, go Margaret. So, yeah, we're not having it.
Nope. Not at all. Like, no, I don't give a shit, man. I don't care. No.
We're doing us. This be our moment. So, your opinions, you're entitled to them, but we don't want to hear them. So, talking about symbolism, a lot of the symbolism is always in what people are wearing. And Camilla was often, we look at either the fashions who designed it, or we look at the jewelry. There are 6 different brooches or pieces of jewelry over the years that have been gifted from Canada, or that have been gifts related to Canada or from Canada, because they're not all from Canada, that come up. And people were wondering how Camilla would be showing the relationship to Canada. And it seems that she went as old school as there is with us,
Yeah, you can
wearing
say that.
the very famous maple leaf brooch. And we have a little something on that too.
The maple leaf brooch, forged in platinum, adorned with diamonds. Back in 2022 in Windsor Castle, we saw it up close by rare special permission.
This is from the Queen's private jewelry collection. It's come from her apartment.
Gifted by King George VI to his Queen to mark their visit here in 1939. A favored piece ever after, given to her daughter Elizabeth, future Queen, on her first Canadian visit in 1951. It's been worn prominently many a visit since by her and later by other royals, including the Queen Consort herself. No symbol of the royal family's deep, multi-generational connection to Canada is worn closer to the heart.
Queens and princesses will be wearing that hundreds of years hence.
So you saw the box,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's like the
Old
box
and
is
weathered.
barely holding together. But yeah, Adrian Arsenault made a comment later on in the show that when she saw it for the first time, it's like when you take it out, when the light hits it, just the sheer reflect, all these diamonds on platinum.
Yeah.
Right.
Very heavy metal, literally.
Yeah, indeed. So lots and lots of symbolism. Little known fact, I did not know this, but when they're talking about the relationship between the king and the prime minister, clearly they have a relationship before, because the prime minister was the governor of the Bank of England, and at that time would have met the royals. But there's also another reason. It seems that Mark Carney has 2 brothers, and one of his brothers, Sean, just happens to be the chief operating officer at Kensington Palace, which is the household of the Prince and Princess of Wales.
How coincidental.
Right? So, okay. So yes, clearly they must know each other well enough. So, yesterday, The Canadian Armed Forces plane carrying the King and Queen landed at Hangar 11 at the Ottawa International Airport. That's the hangar that's there specially to receive dignitaries, foreign diplomats, different leaders. Sometimes it's used, for example, when the Canadian military is out sending, there's a disaster somewhere, we're providing relief, we'll use that hangar for that. But it's specifically used for that. It's reserved just for that. Nobody from the general public typically goes there. So they arrived shortly after 1 p.m. King Charles, because again, we're wondering what he's going to be wearing, was wearing a taupe suit, but a dark red tie.
Mm-hmm.
So Queen Camilla was in a pastel pink coat dress, and of course, with the Canadian brooch. A lot of people were making, the royal historian was making the comment that she decided to wear a very understated color in order to be able to draw the most attention possible to the actual brooch.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, so no bright red like Mr. Grizzly's red. It was Charles's tie. The King's tie was a deeper, had a little bit more of a burgundy-ish tinge to it, but definitely red. And the Queen definitely more in pink, so again red, but more muted. So there was some, red and white and that type of stuff mixed, but again, very, very subtle symbols there. They were greeted on the runway by Canadian officials, including the Prime Minister Mark Carney and Governor General Mary Simon, along with leaders of the national Indigenous organizations. Of course, the Canadian flag came down, and the King's Standard here in Canada got put up. And of course, on Parliament Hill today, the Canadian flag will be down. The flag of the King's Standard will be up there on too, as well as the speech from the throne is read. Normally it would be the Governor General's flag, but the Governor General is not reading the speech from the throne this time because the King is here to do it. So there'll be different flag flying from up top of Parliament today. They walked past a small group of onlookers gathered at the airport, shaking hands with some before climbing into a blue sedan. There were some musicians, drummers, and that type of stuff. There were a whole bunch of children that were brought in from various schools that got a chance to, shake hands and have very, very brief conversations. From there, and then there was an arrival guard at from the Royal Canadian Dragoons that was on hand to welcome the King and Queen, and they'll be there there'll be the departure guard as well. Afterwards, they made their way to Lansdowne Park in Ottawa, which is like in the not the downtown heart of Ottawa, because we usually consider that around where Mr.
Old
Grizzly
Ottawa
is
South
and whatnot. So it's a little more south, but I mean it's still in the core of the city.
Yes,
And
very much so.
yeah.
It's about a 2.5 kilometer walk for me.
Yeah, exactly. If you're skating on the canal, you'll pass by it.
Yeah.
Right. So it's central enough. But Lansdowne Park was named after Lord Charles George Napier, who's the third Marquess of Lansdowne, who served as Governor General of Canada from 1883 to 1888. So and there was a community cultural day. So there were people there from various ethnic groups, dances, foods, all that type of stuff. There were some vendors. There were some games. Again, more kids. And they brought in, as Mr. Grizzly mentioned, the King dropped the ceremonial puck for a street hockey game. And Chris Phillips from the Senators was there, among all the people that were there for that ceremony there. And then they moved on to Rideau Hall, where again more people from the public had shown up, and people were wondering how enthusiastic people would be and how many people would show up, because there's always this talk that Charles isn't really particularly popular and all that type of stuff. Well, the Canadians came out. Canadians did come out. It seems that there were very, very good attendance. The schedule got delayed a little bit because there were so many people to shake hands with and all that kind of stuff that they had planned for. Weather cooperated for the most part. There was some sun, absolutely. A little bit of rain happened. So by the time they got to Rideau Hall, there was some rain, but that did not dampen any spirits. And they were there to, of course, often as happens, they plant a tree. Apparently planting trees are very, very something that's very, very important to King Charles specifically, because he has commitment to the environment. And he's been noted previously on previous tours to say, yeah, we're doing all this stuff, but just get me to the planting of the tree. Is what I'm interested in. So often, sometimes there are two trees being planted, and you will see side by side the king and then the king-queen consort throwing some dirt on. Now, the tree is already pre-planted, and there's a pile of dirt, and then they take some dirt and just throw a couple of extra piles on it, right? I guess it's not like they're actually planting the tree. But still, it's ceremonial. In this case, there was only one tree. This time it was a blue beech tree, apparently symbolizing steadfastness and inclusion. It also, according to the royal historian, grows well in light or shade.
I see what you did there.
Considering all the shade that we're getting from the United States.
I see what you did there.
Yes. And then, of course, the rain stopped at some point, and Mother Nature supplied a double rainbow on the day.
There it is. It took me a second to find it. I had it queued up here. My apologies.
So, speaking about throwing shade, Mother Nature had a bit of her own.
Yeah, a little double rainbow there.
Yes, as Parliament starting to resume with a whole party that seems to be triggered by rainbows.
Well, you can see this one here. That's over the War Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
This one here is sort of over East Block, but also hitting a little bit of the Chateau Laurier. So,
yeah.
Rainbow shade.
So, Mother Nature throwing a little shade of her own. I posted that. And then some conservatives goes, it has nothing to do with the cons. Oh, like much like the way whenever a tornado devastates a trailer park, it's God's punishment because somebody was nice to the gays at some point in history.
Yeah, it's very selective on how they choose these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's only if it suits their agenda, their narrative, their conspiracy theory, echo chamber, thought process.
Are you sure it has nothing to do with cons?
Yeah, nothing.
Because when bad stuff happens because of the weather, it's definitely because of the liberals.
Yeah.
Double rainbow. You know what? I'm going to go with it. So yeah, little shade. So in this case, King Charles put the dirt on, and kind of a moment of a little bit of silliness and laugh there, but it's still ceremonial. Queen Camilla had a can of water and put some water on it, but it was already raining a little, so didn't really need it. But hey, the show must go on.
Show must go on.
At that particular part of the ceremony, there was spontaneous singing of God Save the Queen and O Canada from the people who were in attendance. So, again, Canadians understanding the assignment, realizing the moment. There was also a group called, I believe, the Coronation Girls, who were there. If you don't know about it, it's a part of our history. Back in the day when the Queen was going to be coronated, there were 40 Canadian young women who were considered to be good examples in their community, who were sent to the UK for a 7-week trip, all expenses paid, to be there, and they've remained friends all their lives. Some have passed on since then, like this, but there were a certain amount of the coronation girls who had showed up there as well, and the king got to, in a little moment, to speak to them specifically as well, which was kind of nice. Afterwards, they went into Rideau Hall, where the Governor General and the King had a little bit of an audience, and there are cameras that show up, and it sort of looks like an Oval Office meeting in that there are 2 chairs and there's a flag and that they sit down. Normally, the Governor General sits in the chair on the left, but on that day, she sat on the chair on the right because the chair to the left was for the King. So just a little difference again. Normally when you see that, why is she sitting in the other chair? Well, of course.
Slight difference, yeah.
She's outranked today. So King was there. And basically, they came into the room. They stood up. They were standing. They talked for about like 30, 40 seconds. The Governor General invited the King to sit down in what would be his seat. And he sat first. She sat second because that's what you do. And then the camera was focused on them for about 5 seconds, and then you see the camera turn up and turn away. Like this literally was just to be able to get in, get a few pictures, don't get to see the meeting, the audience, you don't do anything, and no Zelensky or President of South Africa type humiliation setup. It's just to grab the picture and then
that's it. Yeah, we're not going to do that. We don't play those games here in Canada. That's not who we are.
And then there was the audience with the Prime Minister. And then a lot of people were wondering because the king does have seems to have a particular interest in the Indigenous issue and reconciliation, and whether or not there would be something. Well, it turns out that added to the two audiences with the Governor General and the Prime Minister, there was also an audience with each of the leaders of the Métis National Council, the Inuit, Tepirit, Kanatami, and the Assembly of First Nations. If you watch the reception when they arrived, you can see all three of them that are there to greet the King and Queen Consort. Chief Cindy, oh God, can't remember, Nipanek, can't remember, Woodhouse Nipanek from the AFN was in a pretty awesome regalia for the event. Again, they had their audiences individually as well. It seems that there are plans already for the king to return to do a more substantial visit. And this one was just really fit in. I mean, total amount of time that they're going to be in Canada, even though it's over 2 days, is going to be less than 24 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it really is a quick in and out. And these things are normally not done this quickly and this rapidly. But there was clearly a sense from Buckingham Palace that this needed to be done. And there were other symbols and things along the way, right? The king had showed up to expect a vessel wearing a Canadian insignia, which apparently is always on the uniform, but people brought particular attention to it on the day that he did that. As we mentioned yesterday, a couple of days ago, he was at the 100th anniversary of Canada House. Also earlier on, he had presented someone with a sword, which was, again, ceremonial, but meant to signify that, yes, defend. So there have been some subtle symbols. Today, people will be looking to see what happens. Before carrying out his constitutional role by presenting the government's plans and priorities for the upcoming session, King Charles and Queen Camilla will board the state landau, which is a horse-drawn carriage, for the ceremonial, if somewhat abbreviated, drive to Parliament Hill, which will start at the Bank of Canada and proceed to the Senate via Wellington Street, quote, escorted by horses of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police musical ride, according to the program, which was prepared by Canadian Heritage. That should start around 9:50 if you're a royal watcher and you're in Ottawa. That will be the time for that. Then upon his arrival, the king will receive full military honors, which will include a royal salute, a 100-person guard of honor from the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment, and an inspection of the guard and band, and a 21-gun salute. That'll be around 10. He'll then join the Prime Minister for closed-door pre-speech huddle with, quote, Senate leadership before proceeding to the chamber for the main event. And then the parliamentary stage will be set for the king to read the inaugural speech from the throne, which, as per long-standing convention, will be delivered in front of a live audience of politicians, dignitaries, and other invited guests in the Senate chamber, as the speaker and an accompanying contingent of MPs watching the proceedings from their assigned spot by the door. And that will take about 11 minutes. Now, if you're wondering why this spot is assigned by the door, and we're talking about other dignitaries, the 9 members of the Supreme Court are often there as well. It's the House of Commons is the House of the People, and it's green. The Senate is the red chamber. That's the House of the Lords, right? It's the House of the royal family. So commoners are not allowed in the room, typically. I happened to have once with a Canada Youth Parliament experience. One time they actually did let us into the Senate and into the benches, which is like a high privilege, which never ever supposed to happen.
That's a super rare occurrence.
Yeah. So I actually got the chance to sit in a Senate seat when I was a teenager, which was kind of cool. But that never ever happened. So you will see that the doors of the House of Commons are always closed, and the usher of the black rod will come and will knock on the door. Now the doors are open, and they are closed before the usher of the black rod comes in. And there's a reason traditionally for that too. It seems that way back in the day, the king at the time, I guess, had sent someone there to the house, and because they were displeased with what had happened. And it was sort of like, no, this is our place. And the doors were closed on them so that they could not enter to do that. So that's why the usher of the black rod shows up with the black rod and knocks 3 times to ask permission to come and tell everybody in the house that they are wanted at the Senate.
Well, and I've had a chance to sit in the Senate, but it was under construction, so
Yes, exactly. So,
slight difference there, right?
so you will see in the ceremony when they come, when they move, when they walk from one to the other, there are some cords, and they come in like this, and they can't pass those ropes. Because even though they are in peace, they're elected. That's as far as they get to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you will see that. It seems that it will be a short speech, 25 to about 27 minutes approximately. As we know, the Prime Minister seems to be rather efficient and economical with words.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like it will be that as well. Everybody is going to be paying attention to the first few moments, of course, of the speech, because that is the moment at which the king, if he so desired, would be able to add a few words of their own to the speech. Now, what he will read is already read and pre-approved and has been sent, to the UK and been read and all that type of stuff. So there will be no surprises for anyone there. Nobody knows specifically, at least in the public, what the king will say. I'm sure this has been discussed as well. But like I said, you might hear something about the strength of the Commonwealth, or his personal affection for Canada, or something of that. But it will be subtle.
Oh, yes.
Right? It's not going to be like him standing up and going, "Hi, Americans, this is still my turf." Right?
Yeah, it won't be that blatant.
Hands off my Canada. It's going to be, so like us, we have very, very deep affection and personal, or something, or I can remember when I see her with my mother or something, but there will be something showing attachment to.
Well, I'm going to, possibly along the lines of, you've been a transformative president. Not a lie. A little bit of shade. Of course, Trump's not smart enough to pick up on that, because he's kind of an idiot.
I still love that word.
Yeah.
And then that will be read, and upon wrapping up the speech, the royal couple will, quote, pay their respects to Canada's fallen, as well as mark the 25th anniversary of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier during a wreath-laying ceremony at the National War Memorial before heading to the airport. That will take happen around 11:55, and they'll be whisked, and then they'll be on their way. And that will be it. Now, normally when the royals come to Canada, there's also a trip planned to the United States. Usually that follows. Not this time, because it was a quick trip.
Okay.
Yeah. So, speech from the throne today around 11 a.m. Yeah,
There's a little bit of shade there.
Again, a little bit of shade.
We don't have time, sorry. We have a very tight itinerary, and we just don't have time for you today. I'm terribly sorry. Perhaps next time. Next time.
Now, of course, IQ-47 has been invited to Buckingham Palace for another thing. Yeah. So he's got that going on. So again, he doesn't have to pretend to be slighted.
He probably will, though, because he's that petty.
Yes, but again, I don't see where that's our problem.
Well, this has nothing to do with you, so deal with it.
And we certainly didn't tell the king to leave at 11:50. He's the king. This is his house. He can stay as long as he wants. So the king neither leaves neither early nor late, but precisely when he wants to.
Correct.
And intends to. Sorry, United States.
It's just how it works. You don't like it, you don't have to, but you got to accept the fact. And the fact is, he's going to do what he's going to do, and there's nothing you can say or do about it to change his mind.
Pretty much. So
I do have to go. My doggy's here begging me to go out, so I thought I would take this moment to say I bid you adieu and bon voyage. I will be back today. Hopefully, my back is in better shape today than it was yesterday, which is why I didn't do any recording at all. I didn't even download yesterday's show to augment it yet. I'll do that later today to get yesterday's show up on the audio-only version. But between now and then, have yourselves a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, sir. Our dear Mr. Grizzly, going off to do grizzly things today. All right. So that's about all the stuff I have on the royals and stuff. That's how the day will go today. Some of the symbolism behind it, why this has meaning. Of course, we'll have the speech from the speech from the throne at 11 a.m. Speech from the throne is an entirely different movie at around 11 a.m. today. And that's 11 a.m. Eastern, of course. So depending on where your time zone is, adjust accordingly if you want to watch it live. But yeah, that's it's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is over the next couple of days, if there is any specifically. But yes, that should be the main events of the day, and Parliament should then be officially up and running. Now, in other things, with regards to the NDP, as we mentioned, they were seeking official party status because it comes with additional funds for research as well as membership on committees, regular speaking slots during question period, and at least one per supply cycle, the opportunity to bring forward an opposition motion for debate. The Liberals said the top priority for the abbreviated spring session would be passing a law cutting the rate for the lowest income bracket from 15 to 14%, but the Liberals would need the backing of at least one other party to pass any such measure. Jordan Leichnitz, who's somebody who I very much respect their views, had a comment about this, which extraordinarily I happen to disagree with in this sense today. And her comment was, "This is not going to age well once Poilièvre is back in the House. Tough to imagine committees moving at speed and scale with only the CPC and Bloc as dance partners." Now, she does have a point in that the CPC can be obstructionist or whatnot. But the point here that she's trying to make is that, gee, if only you had given the 7 NDP members official party status, well, that would have really helped with speed and scale with regard to committees. Problem is that with only 7 NDP MPs, even with party status, there just aren't enough of them to unclock enough blockages, if someone wanted to put some in place, on enough committees to make speed and scale happen if the CPC chooses to obstruct. Not really worried about the Bloc. They have no real history of this behavior. But I don't think that there is actually feasibly a reality in which changing the law to afford party status to parties that elect 7 MPs only could have made such a material change in the operation of committees that speed and scale could be guaranteed in the face of a willing conservative obstruction of the process. So, nothing wrong with saying it. Clearly, it's a position that you can take, and of course, in this world, sometimes you got to work with what you got, and when you don't have much, you got to do so much with it, with so little. But in this particular instance, I don't see how giving the official party status would have been enough to overcome that, if that was indeed the plan. However, given that they are not going to get it, Don Davies, who is the interim leader of the NDP, kind of pivots and changes his tune, according to Davis Legree of iPolitics. And by the way, big thanks to iPolitics and CBC for a lot of the data that we had and information going into what the order of the day and the symbolism is, because that's where we sourced a lot of this information. They've been incredible sources for that, and recommended follows. Interim NDP leader Don Davies believes his party can still be relevant in the House of Commons even if they are not granted official party status. Only 7 new Democrat MPs were elected in last month's federal election, leaving the NDP short of the 12-seat threshold that parties must meet to qualify for official status, which determines who receives financial and organizational resources. Only officially recognized parties are able to sit on committees and receive regular speaking slots in question period. On Monday, Government House Leader Stephen McKinnon effectively shut the door on any notion that the NDP could negotiate an agreement to obtain official party status, emphasizing how the guidelines are established in legislation. However, Davies said, the current arithmetic in Parliament allows his party to have an outsized impact on parliamentary votes whether or not they obtain official party status. That is indeed true. Quote, in a minority parliament where the minority government has 169 seats and you need 3 for a majority, any party that has 7 seats obviously has the balance of power, Davies told reporters. I think we're going to be able to play a profoundly important role in this parliament. Now, again, where the NDP keeps on making this mistake when they're talking about balance of power, they keep on talking as if there's only one party that has the balance of power. And we're hearing a lot of this in our discourse. It's almost like they're treating the Bloc Québécois as a party that can't possibly hold the balance of power because they don't run candidates in all provinces. Again, as we need to keep on reminding people that like to frame things in these ways and like to discount the Bloc and their role and their weight in Parliament for whatever reason, or the right to even be there for any reason. In the riding come vote time, popular vote matters. Once all the popular votes in each of the 343 little elections that we have that make it so that we have elected a parliament have taken place and are validated and are final, it's all about the seats, baby. It's all about the seats. It's not about how many you ran in. It's not about whether or not somebody thinks you should be considered a federal party because you only run in one province or not. You're a federal party if you run in a federal election and you're registered with Elections Canada, regardless of how many seats you run in. That's all it takes. That's literally the only requirement. So you have the Bloc Québécois there with 22 seats or so. They hold the balance of power too. They hold the balance of power too. Two parties hold balance of power, not just the NDP, but the NDP keeps on talking as if we're the party that holds the balance of power. You could all vote no to something. If the Bloc all votes yes, the bill passes. So while you do have a balance of power, because you do not have the balance of power, at least not exclusively and all to yourselves, which is probably another reason for which there was no desire to change the rules, because the Liberals know that, again, given certain circumstances, it is possible to work with the Bloc because the Bloc is not intentionally unreasonable and intentionally obstructionist, as other parties are. So the NDP has to get over that delusion that they are absolutely necessary and vital. Because so long as the Liberals can make deals with the Bloc, the NDP is just as relevant as the Conservatives are at the moment. So have to watch that attitude. Quote, Don Davies continues, as in every minority parliament, there's a real opportunity for us to push and promote progressive policies and hold this government to account in a way that you can't do in a majority parliament. Davies also said he will continue to work securing certain, quote, privileges only afforded to official parties, including committee spots, adding that there have been, quote, fruitful discussions with all the parties. And that, however, is true. Like this, parties can get together and negotiate amongst themselves certain budgets or positions or whatnot to include the New Democrats. And I'm sure that the Liberals might be more willing to push for that and be of help and assistance that way. Hence, probably fruitful discussions with all the parties. And it seems that there may be some conservative openness to allow that. Who knows? But if there's Bloc and there is Liberal agreement to that, it could be that would be enough. And even if the Conservatives objected, that wouldn't be enough to grant that type of those additional privileges to the party. So there is room between official party status and where they are now to grant some extra privilege so that the NDP can do more. And we'll see if other parties think that it's vital enough for the role of democracy for the NDP to have those specific privileges. So those things are yet to be discussed and negotiated. Last week, multiple Liberal and New Democrat strategists told iPolitics it could be a win-win scenario for the NDP to receive votes on standing committees, as the current makeup would give the Conservatives and Bloc Québécois combined voting majority, and therefore the ability to stall government legislation at the committee stage. Decisions with regard to the allocation of parliamentary resources are made by the House of Commons Board of Internal Economy, which will be shared by new House Speaker Francis Scarpellegia, though only official parties are given a seat. Now, again, while it is the reality that Conservatives and the Bloc could team up to obstruct certain things, it would have to be on an issue that the Bloc and the Conservatives agree on. And there's not a lot there, and the Bloc leader does not have much love for Pierre Poilièvre. So it is possible, right? But I don't think it's anything that the Conservatives could rely upon. Decisions with regard to the allocation of parliamentary resources are made by the House of Commons Board of Internal Economy, which will be chaired by a new House Speaker, Francis Scarpellegia, though only official parties are given a seat. Davies said the committee has not yet been struck, but he believes there are legitimate reasons for the NDP to be granted certain provisions offered to other parties, adding that it has happened many times before in Canadian history. Quote, one of the arguments I've made is that we're a national party, he said. We've had 1.2 million Canadians vote for us, and it's important that we have the tools we need to function and discharge that responsibility. The NDP also lost official party status after the 1993 federal election when its caucus was reduced to 9 MPs, which was previously the party's worst electoral result. The NDP regained status in 1997 after winning 21 seats. So remains to be seen, but yes, it certainly could be helpful. And I know it sounds like I'm contradicting myself, to have some NDP MPs on these committees like this, but that still wouldn't make that the balance of power of the opposition parties versus the government on these committees would still be in favor of opposition parties because the Liberals got elected to a minority government. So do not necessarily have the majority on the committees. So again, because both, and again, it's that balance of power thing, because both the Bloc and the NDP have the balance of power. If the Liberals do have a good working relationship with the Bloc, well, then that makes it such that on the committees, again, as was stated before, whether the NDP was there or not wouldn't make any difference to the ease of the passage of the bills. Right. About the only time that could make a difference is if on the same committee where there happened to be an NDP member present, because where the NDP member plus the Liberals would make the majority, would be the one vote that flips it. And the Bloc and the Conservatives did decide to obstruct together, but only in that particular situation. And I don't know how many committees out of all the committees there are, 7 NDP MPs could sit on in total and be effective. I would assume that some might have to be doing double or triple duty if all the committees wanted to be covered. And I'm not sure, like I said, I'm not sure that that's really there. So they would have to be very strategic in which committees they were on. And then again, I don't know if they necessarily get to select which ones they're on. If that's a decision of everybody else, whether or not they'll allow them on it. Right. So that part of the process I'm not familiar with, but I can see a scenario where that's the case, right? Since they're not on the committees and they have to be voted on. So, well, we would like to be voted on that one. Oh, no, we don't want you on that one. But no, nothing to do with finance. But how about, our committee on endangered species? There, we'll give you a seat on that one, right? So there could also be games played there as to which committees they would be allowed to sit on and how effective they would be in that sense. So it's not that easy for the NDP to just say, put us on a couple of committees and we can make things go more smoothly. Them being on the committee does not necessarily create the majority for the Liberals, right? Unless the NDP won't join these committees and just said, we'll vote for whatever you want, no matter what, which I don't think any party would do. So, yeah, the NDP is in a bit of an interesting situation. However, if these discussions for additional privileges are fruitful, it does seem that there is some goodwill somewhere and some recognition that there is indeed a role for them to play, and 1.2 million votes is nothing to sneeze at, and therefore they should be offered something. I would like to see them have something of some type. I personally wouldn't have minded had they had official party status. But if it does require change in legislation, I'm not sure I want to set the bar at being down to 7 permanently. And I guess technically one could write a law that it applies only for that it sunsets after 4 years or something. But I don't know. I just don't know. That's, again, you don't want to create legal precedent with a bad case. So that's probably also trying to be avoided here. All right. That's the sort of overall general stuff. The one little bit I wanted to bring about again is something that I was talking about a little bit yesterday, but I want to talk about it from a different perspective because we talked a little bit about what was going on in Gaza and that type of stuff. And there's the discussion about what's going on over there and what people can do over there, but there's the discussion about how it affects us here as well. And that discussion doesn't seem to happen as often. And something interesting happened over the course of the weekend and late last week, where one of the two major federal parties had something to say about certain issues, and another one had something to say about some of those issues, but was curiously mute about others. And nobody has actually asked them the question why that is yet. So we noticed it, and we would like to bring it to your attention here today. Um, there was a tragedy that happened in the United States um, around, I think, is May 22nd or May 2011th. Pierre Poilièvre wrote about it. Said, I am heartbroken and outraged by the brutal murder of Yaron Lachinsky and Sarah Milgram in Washington, D.C. last night. These two innocent souls had lives of promise, lives that were cut short when they were targeted and killed simply because they were Jewish. Anti-Semitism is the world's most enduring form of hatred. We see it rear its ugly head close to home here in Canada as well, with violence, vandalism, and intimidation in our communities. We must speak the truth, stand with the Jewish community, and unite to erase this hatred from Canada and the entire world. May we honor Yaron and Sarah's memory by ensuring we do everything we can to stop this evil. And it was an absolutely horrendous event that should never, ever, ever happen anywhere. And the event is all the more tragic because it seems the two were a couple. And days before, Yaron had proposed. So it's a sad, sad, sad story all around. According to the BBC's Rachel Hagan and Gabriella Pomeroy, Yaron Lachinsky was preparing to propose to his girlfriend Sarah Milgram. He had just bought an engagement ring and had planned to ask on a trip to Jerusalem next week. But on Wednesday night in Washington, they were shot dead by a man who shouted, quote, Free Palestine outside the Capitol Jewish Museum as they left an event billed by organizers as a discussion of the Gaza crisis that aimed to turn pain into purpose. Their deaths have shocked colleagues at the Israeli embassy, sparked international outrage, and prompted Israeli leaders to blame rising hostility and anti-Semitism after Hamas attacked the country on the 7th of October 2023. The ambassador in Washington, Yechiel Leiter, paid tribute to the pair as a beautiful couple. Quote, they were to be engaged, he said. The young man purchased a ring this week with the intention of proposing to his girlfriend next week in Jerusalem. Sarah Milgram's father, Robert, said his family loved Mr. Lachinsky and that the couple were due to go to Israel on Sunday to meet his family. He told the BBC's U.S. partner, CBS News. Mr. Lachinsky, 28, worked in the embassy's political department while Miss Milgram, 26, had been part of the public diplomacy department for a year and a half. He was a German-born Israeli citizen, served 3 years in the Israel Defense Forces, and held a master's degree in government diplomacy and strategy from Reichman University. He described himself on LinkedIn as proud to call both Jerusalem and Nuremberg home, and as wanting to, quote, expand the circle of peace with our Arab neighbor. Friends told the BBC that Mr. Lachinsky was a Christian with great belief in Israel. Jenny Haveman from ReRun Israel said that he was a nice, modest, calm, and friendly man, quote, a part of Christian Zionist group, and he was very into bringing Germans and Israelis together. Ronan Chauvel, another friend, described him as a, quote, very devout Christian who has moved from Israel to Germany. Many people wanted to understand his background. He was a serious Christian believer. Sarah Milgram, quote, loves Israel and she loved everybody that lived in the Middle East, her father Robert said. She spent several summers in Israel working with Palestinian and Israeli groups to bring them together, including with Tech to Peace, an advocacy group training young Palestinians and Israelis and promoting dialogue between them. Quote, she had a lot of close Palestinian friends as well as many Israeli friends, he said. Tech to Peace said Miss Milgram was an active volunteer who brought people together with empathy and purpose. Quote, her dedication to building a better future was evident in everything she did, it said. Her voice and spirit will be profoundly missed. So, again, really beautiful people, very much in love, doing good things in the world, trying to bring people together. The Israeli embassy said that, quote, its entire staff is heartbroken and devastated by the couple's death. Quote, no words can express the depth of our grief and horror at this terrible loss. Police identified the suspect as a 30-year-old from Chicago, was arrested at the scene after the shooting, and has since been charged with first-degree murder as well as murder of foreign officials and related firearm charges. According to the details in an affidavit, the suspect initially opened fire on the victims, then reloaded and shot again, quote, several more times at closer range. It's said that as one victim tried to call away, he followed behind and fired again. Ouch. The shooting has led to heightened security at Israeli diplomatic missions around the world. The deaths come as the war in Gaza enters its 19th month. The suspect is in custody, is being questioned over Mr. Lachinsky and Miss Milgram's death. The suspect, based on last name, does not seem to be a member of an Arab community. So, the leader of the opposition sees this tragedy, draws attention to it, and I have problems with this because not that nobody should see a tragedy, but this particular leader of the opposition has a tendency to exploit tragedy, no matter where it is, for partisan purpose. And this particular leader of the opposition has been pretty much 100% full in his support for the Netanyahu government and everything that it has done so far in prosecuting this war. He is the only party leader to routinely express 100% unconditional support to the Netanyahu government, and also interpreting any questioning of the manner in which the Netanyahu government is choosing to prosecute this war as being some type of affront. I personally believe that this particular leader of the opposition is shamelessly pandering to Canada's Jewish community, because even though he says these words when it comes time to vote, his mortar mouth is never where his vote is. We all remember that on the day that he kept the House sitting all night long to vote no to many issues, Pierre Poilièvre himself excused himself from that marathon session in order to be able to attend on the first night of Hanukkah lighting ceremonies and then attend a fundraising dinner. But on that same very day that he was attending lighting ceremonies for the first day of Hanukkah, he also voted no to funding a Jewish community center in Vancouver and a Holocaust museum in Montreal. I have trouble putting his stated 100% full-throated support for anything the Netanyahu government does together with the fact that when it comes time to vote for things that will help people here in Canada from the Jewish community, he votes no. That, to me, seems to be a fair-weather trend. And therefore, when I see him rushing to say that he's heartbroken about the deaths of two people he assumed to be Jewish, it seems one was a Christian, it seems to me he's once again exploiting their deaths for political purposes, but that's not very sincere. That's just my personal opinion, placing it in the overall stuff that he does here when it comes to actually having to show support for the community to which he's pandering when it matters. The words and the deeds don't line up. Now, the Prime Minister also had some things to say about this event, because it is an important international event. It affects allies. It happened on the soil of a very, very important ally who, unfortunately, we may not be able to trust as much as we used to. But it also happened to people who were working with the embassy of another very important ally. Prime Minister Mark Carney. I am devastated and appalled by the murder of 2 young Israeli embassy staff in Washington, D.C. This was a targeted attack against the Jewish community, a violent act of anti-Semitism. The hate is intolerable, and I condemn it in the strongest terms. My prayers are with Yaron and Sarah, their grieving loved ones, and the entire Jewish community. We cannot look away from the power of anti-Semitism and its radicalization. We must keep Jewish Canadians safe. To that end, Canada's new government will fight the horrifying rise in hate and protect our communities. We'll increase funding to the Canada Community Security Program and introduce legislation that will make it a criminal offense to intentionally and willfully obstruct access to any place of worship, schools, and community centers, and a criminal offense to willfully intimidate or threaten those attending services at these locations. So, both on their own, what the Prime Minister had to say and what the Leader of the Opposition had to say stand, and they are solid statements. I don't know of anything in Mark Carney's history that indicates he might be saying one thing and doing another, as opposed to the situation with Pierre. Now, however, on surface, prima facie, both of them handled this situation relatively well, doing the thing that is normally expected in this case. However, a few days earlier, there was an incident involving Canadians. Now, it would seem that this incident made it such that Canada had to summon the ambassador of Israel to Canada to the office for a discussion. According to David Baxter of National Newswatch, Canadian Press, but as appearing in National Newswatch, Canada is summoning the Israeli ambassador to explain why Israel Defense Forces fired warning shots near a diplomatic tour in the West Bank on Wednesday. Prime Minister Mark Carney called the situation, quote, totally unacceptable and said Canada expects an explanation of what happened. Quote, it's some of the many things that are totally unacceptable that's going on in the region, Carney said at a press conference on Parliament Hill Wednesday. The Israeli military said Wednesday it regrets the inconvenience caused by warning shots it fired as diplomats toured the city of Jenin. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand confirmed on social media that 4 Canadians were part of the delegation touring Jenin. She added that she is, quote, relieved that all of them are safe. The minister says she expects a full investigation and accountability. Quote, I have asked my officials to summon Israel's ambassador to convey Canada's serious concerns, Anand posted on X or Twitter. A video of the incident circulating online shows members of the tour group speaking to cameras near a large yellow gate. Gunshots can be heard as the group hurries away from the gate and goes around a street corner. In one video, 2 soldiers can be seen pointing guns in the direction of the group. In its statement, the Israeli Defense Forces said the group, quote, deviated from its approved route and soldiers fired warning shots to get the group to move away from an area it was not permitted to visit. The military says no one was injured in the incident. Quote, Jean-Noël Barrot, France's foreign minister, said in a social media post the situation is unacceptable and Israel's ambassador to France has been summoned to explain it. Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said he's also calling on the Israeli ambassador in Italy to explain the incident. Israel's army said it launched an inquiry into what happened and will speak with the affected diplomats to update them on the findings. Former Canadian diplomat Colin Robertson said that when diplomats go to observe a combat area, their safety is not guaranteed. Quote, things happen which certainly are not probably intentional on the part of the Israeli government, but these things have happened in the past. We've had Canadian observers killed, for example, when we were doing peace monitoring in Vietnam and other situations, he said. Robertson said that while these are, quote, serious incidents, he attributes Wednesday's incident to the warlike conditions in the West Bank. In a joint statement issued earlier this week, Prime Minister Mark Carney, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and French President Emmanuel Macron threatened to impose, quote, targeted sanctions on Israel in response to its renewed military offensive in Gaza and the, quote, wholly inadequate amount of food aid allowed into the enclave. The letter also stated the leader's opposition to any attempt to expand Israeli settlement in the West Bank. Asked on Wednesday about whether the U.S. was supportive of the statement's release, Carney said he advised the vice president that Canada was probably going to say something. It was a one-way conversation, Carney said, because during that conversation, journalists asked, well, we're framing it almost like, did you ask permission for doing this? And it's like, to the United States, it's like, no, we didn't ask permission. Like, we just informed them that this is what we're going to be doing. It was not a conversation. Prime Minister pretty firm there. Carney said the purpose of the statement is for Israel to ensure that adequate humanitarian aid gets to Gaza. He said in French that it's up to the Israeli government to act. On Tuesday, the UK issued sanctions against what it said were 3 individuals, 2, quote, illegal settler outposts, and 2 organizations, quote, supporting violence against Palestinian communities in the West Bank. While Britain also paused negotiations with Israel on a new trade deal, goods continue to flow between the two countries. Robertson said he expects to see Canada issuing more declarations along European allies in the future. Carney has said Canada needs to stand on its own now that relations with the U.S. have soured over President Donald Trump's tariffs and calls for Canada's annexation. Canada has sanctioned people and individuals for extremist settler violence against Palestinians in the West Bank in the past. The most recent round of sanctions was announced in September of last year. Trump was asked Wednesday if he planned to speak with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about Israeli military operations in Gaza and mounting international pressure for a ceasefire. The president did not respond to the question. Robertson said he'd be surprised if the U.S. was not aware in advance that the joint statement from Canada, the UK, and France was going to be released. Quote, much of foreign policy, particularly with the United States, is conducted on the premise of no surprises, and that's what you do with your allies. You let them know what you're doing, he said. I think you're going to see more of Canada taking a kind of strategically pragmatic approach to foreign policy and no longer moving completely in tandem with what has been our closest ally and partner in the United States. In a social media post late Monday, Netanyahu accused the leaders of Canada, France, and the UK of, quote, offering a huge prize for the genocidal attack on Israel on October 7th, while inviting more such atrocities. Hamas, which is listed as a terrorist entity in Canada, welcomed the letter in an online statement Tuesday, calling it a significant step in the right direction. Now, there's a lot going on here. The one thing that did not go on here is that Pierre Poilièvre, who allegedly is putting Canada first and has expressed seemingly 100% support for the Netanyahu government in everything it does, had absolutely nothing at all to say about this incident. Nothing. 4 Canadians were there. There were warning shots fired. The government of Canada called in the Israel ambassador. The government of Italy did. The government of France did. They all thought it was important enough to say something. But the leader of the opposition had absolutely nothing to say at all on the issue of warning shots being fired around 4 Canadians. That doesn't strike me as someone who plans to stand up for Canada. That doesn't strike me as someone who puts Canada first. Is a glaring omission. And nobody's been reporting on it. Now, with regard to the letter, the joint statement, if you would call it, of rebuke with regard to Israel for what has been happening with the war itself. So re-prosecuting it, and Israel has made a statement that it would like to seize complete control over the territory, which is not going over very well in international circles. I don't think any of Israel's allies had given allyship for the purposes of them seizing complete control of the area. And they, I don't think they were on board for just standing by and watching people being starved to death. So they had some stuff to say about that. And this is what the joint statement with the leaders of the UK and France stated. Quote, "We strongly oppose the expansion of Israel's military operations in Gaza. The level of human suffering in Gaza is intolerable. Yesterday's announcement that Israel will allow a basic quantity of food into Gaza is wholly inadequate. We call on the Israeli government to stop its military operations in Gaza and immediately allow humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. This must include engaging with the UN to ensure a return to delivery of aid in line with humanitarian principles. We call on Hamas to release immediately the remaining hostages they have so cruelly held since 7th of October 2023. The Israeli government's denial of essential humanitarian assistance to the civilian population is unacceptable and risks breaching international humanitarian law. We condemn the abhorrent language used recently by members of the Israeli government, threatening that, in their despair at the destruction of Gaza, civilians will start to relocate. Permanent forced displacement is a breach of international humanitarian law. Israel suffered a heinous attack on October 7th. We have always supported Israel's right to defend itself against terrorism, but this escalation is wholly disproportionate. We will not stand by while the Netanyahu government pursues these egregious actions. If Israel does not cease the renewed military offensive and lift its restrictions on humanitarian aid, we will take further concrete actions in response. We oppose any attempt to expand settlements in the West Bank. Israel must halt settlements which are illegal and undermine the viability of a Palestinian state and the security of both Israelis and Palestinians. We will not hesitate to take further action, including targeted sanctions. We strongly support the effort led by the United States, Qatar, and Egypt to secure an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. It is a ceasefire, the release of all remaining hostages, and a long-term political solution that offer the best hope of ending the agony of the hostages and their families, alleviating the suffering of civilians in Gaza, ending Hamas's control of Gaza, and achieving a pathway to a two-state solution consistent with the goals of the 18 June conference in New York, co-chaired by Saudi Arabia and France. These negotiations need to succeed, and we must all work towards the implementation of a two-state solution, which is the only way to bring long-lasting peace and security that both Israelis and Palestinians deserve and ensure long-term stability in the region. We will continue to work with the Palestinian Authority, regional partners, Israel, and the United States to finalize consensus on arrangements for Gaza's future, building on the Arab Plan. We affirm the important role of the high-level two-state solution conference at the UN in June in building international consensus around this aim, and we are committed to recognizing a Palestinian state as a contribution to achieving a two-state solution and are prepared to work with others to this end. That was the statement. In response to that statement, Pierre Poilièvre decided that this was a good time to attack the government of Canada. So we have a situation where warning shots were fired. 4 Canadian members or staff of our diplomatic corps there were in the area when the shots were fired, and the leader of the opposition who says nothing, where we have a prime minister that says this is unacceptable and one of many unacceptable things that have happened recently. Then we get 3 international leaders, and again, international leaders called their respective ambassadors in to find out what was going on. Pierre had nothing to say. Then we have this incident here where the government of Canada, along with allies in the UK and France, say, this is unacceptable. We cannot be doing this. And, well, Pierre Poilièvre on that has nothing to say. Then there's this terrible incident where 2 people who worked at the Israeli mission in the United States are killed. Pierre suddenly has a lot to say, as does the Prime Minister. And then when we take a stance against starving, potentially starving 2 million people to death, well, what does the leader of the opposition have to say? He doesn't have anything to say about the people who are starving to death. He doesn't have anything to say about the people who are not letting the aid go through. He has something to say about Hamas's response to this letter. And then Pierre goes, the Hamas terrorists have just thanked Mark Carney for his recent statement on Israel. When terrorist groups like Hamas say your actions, quote, are a significant step in the right direction, that means they are not. Threatening Israel with sanctions and, quote, further concrete actions while a terrorist group on their borders hold their citizens hostage and refuse to stop attacking Israel is wrong. This war can end tomorrow if Hamas hands over the remaining hostages, lays down their weapons, and surrenders. That's a lot of ifs. This war can end tomorrow if the other side just capitulates. Okay. And what's your plan for that? Right? Conservatives will always stand for Israel's right to exist and defend itself. Again, conservatives will always stand for Israel's right, not Canadians, only conservatives. Again, that shameless pandering to the community he does nothing for when it comes time to actually vote. That's who we have as the leader of the opposition. This is a wholly unserious position that doesn't take into account anything other than 100% unconditional support for the Netanyahu government. And that's it. That's the only thing. This is not good. This is not good. And what happened here is that Pierre conflated two statements, because there was a statement of condemnation for how the war is being prosecuted. But then there was another joint statement, and this one didn't get much play. But this one was on May 19th. And it's the foreign ministers of Australia, Canada, Belgium, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, as well as the EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy and Vice President of the European Commission, the EU Commissioner for Equality, Preparedness and Crisis Management, and the EU Commissioner for the Mediterranean. All of these people together issued the following statement. And this is the statement. Not Hamas's statement. This is here, the statement that Pierre is saying is the horrible one. Not the one that I just read before. This one. He's conflating both of them. Now, I want you to remember the list of all those nations, because if Pierre was prime minister and said those same things, he would be saying them about the leaders and the foreign ministers of all these countries and all these institutions, thus creating a huge international incident. Fortunately, he's only the leader of the opposition. But those exact same words in his mouth as prime minister would have created an incident with all of these nations and groups. And here's the statement to which Pierre objected so much. Quote, whilst we acknowledge indications of a limited restart of aid, whilst we acknowledge indications of a limited restart of aid, Israel blocked humanitarian aid entering Gaza for over 2 months. Foods, medicines, and essential supplies are exhausted. The population faces starvation. Gaza's people must receive the aid they desperately need. Quote, prior to the aid block, the UN and humanitarian NGOs delivered aid into Gaza, working with great courage at the risk of their lives and in the face of major access challenges imposed by Israel. These organizations subscribe to upholding humanitarian principles, operating independently with neutrality, impartiality, and humanity. They have the logistical capacity, expertise, and operational courage to deliver assistance across Gaza to those who need it most. Quote, Israel's security cabinet has reportedly approved a new model for delivering aid into Gaza, which the UN and our humanitarian partners cannot support. They are clear that they will not participate in any arrangements that does not fully respect the humanitarian principles. Humanitarian principles matter for every conflict around the world and should be applied consistently in every war zone. The UN has raised concerns that the proposed model cannot deliver aid effectively at the speed and scale required. It places beneficiaries and aid workers at risk, undermines the role and independence of the UN and our trusted partners, and links humanitarian aid to political and military objectives. Humanitarian aid should never be politicized, and Palestinian territory must not be reduced or nor subjected to any demographic change. As humanitarian donors, we have two straightforward messages for the government of Israel. Allow a full resumption of aid into Gaza immediately, and enable the UN and humanitarian organizations to work independently and impartially to save lives, reduce suffering, and maintain dignity. We remain committed to meeting acute needs we see in Gaza. We also reiterate our firm message that Hamas must immediately release all remaining hostages and allow humanitarian assistance to be distributed without interference. It is our firm conviction that an immediate return to a ceasefire and working towards the implementation of a two-state solution are the only way to bring peace and security to Israelis and Palestinians and ensure long-term stability for the whole region. This is the statement to which Hamas reacted and said was a step in the right direction. Now, while we don't care what Hamas has to say, whether they approve or not, that's a sideshow. That's what Pierre chose to latch on to, what Hamas said. Not what Canada said, not what the foreign ministers of Australia, Belgium, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Iceland, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Portugal, Slovenia, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom had to say. But what Hamas said. Pierre accepted Hamas's version and then used it to attack Canadian leadership. And Pierre had more concern for members of a diplomatic mission in Washington, D.C., citizens of another country that's not Canada, than he did for Canadians who were in the vicinity when warning shots were fired. I'm not impressed with that. I'm not impressed with that. I think it's an extremely bad look for the leader of the opposition to be attacking his own country and not developing a sudden case of very convenient mutism when shots are fired around Canadian diplomats. Other people might see it differently, but that's how I see it. And when I see the leader of the opposition attacking Canada, showing no regard for Canadians, and then showing regard while pandering to a community for whom he does not deliver when there's a vote. I do not understand why this behavior has not been singled out, because this leader of the opposition is clearly not a friend to any Canadian Muslim, but we knew that based on the party's past positions on the barbaric cultural practices snitch line and on citizenship ceremonies, and their unwillingness to stand for Canadian citizens in the province of Quebec who are denied equal access to employment because they might wear a religious symbol on their head. And in the case of that law, again, Jewish men who wear a yarmulke would be affected. So Pierre's not standing up for them. Pierre keeps on talking a good game about standing up for Canada's Jewish community, but he never actually delivers. other than words and rhetoric, and using the tragedy and the misery and the devastation and the pain and the fear, the legitimate fear that Jewish Canadians have. Because anti-Semitism is definitely a thing, and it definitely is enduring. And it is definitely on the rise. But points to it, exploits it, raises fears about it, fundraises off it, but can't even vote for a Jewish community center and a Holocaust museum. And uses lighting ceremonies for the first days of Hanukkah as a pretext to get out of an all-night voting session that he himself called for and to attend a fundraiser. Conveniently making it such that if there's any pictures at all in the press that day of any politician anywhere in the nation being with the Jewish community on the first day of lighting for Hanukkah, it would be him and only him. At some point, somebody needs to point out that this man is no friend of Jewish Canadians in real life. And that all he is doing is creating more division here. By being so full all in on one side that he's not even able to criticize when Canadian citizens have warning shots fired around them or when people are being starved to death. I do not understand how this man keeps on getting a free pass. And I'm not saying to excuse the government. I'm not saying that the government's doing everything right on this. I'm looking specifically at him. How he stands up for Canada, how he stands up for Canadians, and how he stands up for the members of the community he says he stands for. When it comes time to move from just rhetoric that gets caught on TV and actually vote. My personal position probably won't be popular with everyone, but I see this as something glaring that somebody needs to find the courage to address. Somebody needs to call this man out and point out that on the issue of supporting Canada's Jewish community and being against anti-Semitism in real life, he does not walk his talk. Pierre Poilièvre just does not. So, King, Joker, Jesters, and Fools. The ambassador of the United States to Canada telling us when it is that we should move on. The Conservatives pulling their MPs from the Speaker's race while claiming Liberals try to rig everything so they get to control everything. Conservatives attacking Canada, having worse words to say about Canada than they have to say about Hamas. And then just people seeming to not want to accept that reality is what reality is, regardless of what you would prefer it to be. Listen, I'm still waiting on that learning and growing and changing that was promised. I don't see it. I just don't see it happening. And as long as this man is the leader of this party, they are not going to change. Not that they've evolved or changed much, regardless of who the leader is since Harper left. But yeah, whatever it is that they're doing, this is not it. And it's not what we need, and it doesn't help. and it certainly isn't unifying. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. But I know that it is summarily unhelpful to have someone who will not allow any criticism of any kind against the Netanyahu government to be uttered in this nation without claiming it is somehow tacit support for Hamas. That seems to be the conservative strategy at the moment. It is not the strategy of a serious party that should be granted authority to have leadership and power over anyone in this country. My personal opinion. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. We hope that you love listening to us because we loved making this for you. Remember, sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. Now, hey, if you are a busy beaver or a busy cub and, you're making things happen, you're out there living your best life, engaged in your community, trying to get people to vote, or just trying to be informed and engaged. And sometimes, well, that makes you very busy. Very, very busy. And you don't have time to sit down and watch the show. Well, hey, maybe you need to take us with you. And that's okay, because you can. Because, well, hey, we're portable. Ding, right there. If you scan that QR code, the Ray Girl, who sponsors our pod page, makes it possible for you to put us in your ears when you have to go. Just scan that QR code, and that will bring you to podpage.com/TheTrueNorthEagerBeaver with a hyphen between each one of those words. And when you go there and click on subscribe, well, when we have something fresh off the bandwidth, boom, comes directly to you. It's that easy. That's all you got to do. Click subscribe. We come to you. Now, if you would like to help us in other ways, grab your surfboard and come on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page. We have buttons for you to smash with. Like, share, and subscribe. Kits, Elaine, and Cassie would definitely approve. So come on over. Give us a little tickle. It gets us some happy, and it helps us with the algorithm. Thank you so very much. If you would like to help us in other ways, well, we have our coffee page. That's an absolutely beautiful place that you can go to show an enthusiastic expression of encouragement to your favorite beaver or grizzly if you like what we do and you would like us to do more. Well, a little bit of change in the emergency hydration fund. Helps a lot. It keeps us going, helps us improve the show, keeps your beaver moist. Very, very important. And it helps us being able to continue to produce this and deliver this to you 5 days a week, plus some bonus material every now and then. All right. So thank you so much for your support and encouragement. And to all those who have done so over the recent past, thank you so very much. Every dollar goes back into the show, helps make it better for all of you. And we thank you so very much for everything that you do on that front to help us. All right. Let's see what else we got for you. Oh, well, yeah, we like to hear from you. So why not write to us? TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com is our email address. It's where you can also send a direct transfer if you want to support us and don't want to have anything to do with the USCE Tech Bros. But if you want to let us know what you think about the show, good, bad, ugly, be gentle. We are sensitive creatures. Or if you have some guest suggestions, or for example, if you would like to participate in our Q&A show and you have a question about politics that you would like us to answer or how the show runs, all of it, it's good. TrueNorthEagerBeaver@gmail.com. That's where you send it. And if you want to communicate with us through our socials, @TrueEager, at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, on the Jitter, that's where you can reach us. Our Facebook page, which is our original home on the web, True North Eager Beaver. Or if you are listening on our YouTube channel, either live with the best damn fab in all of podcasting, or a little later, boom, right down here in the comment section. Just leave us a little something. We read absolutely everything, even though we're not able to get back to everyone. And again, all of your comments, just like your expressions of encouragement, get put back into the show, and we use it to improve and help make the product even better, increase the quality so that it responds to your needs and your expectations. So there you go, kids and cubs. Thank you for all that you are able to do for us. We really do support. We really do appreciate it. And remember, as we always say, if you're not able to contribute financially, the gifts of your attention and participation are the ones that matter the most to us. So please do not worry. Just keep on showing up and sharing our material with a little comment. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, leave us some stars and reviews. All of these things help get the word out, and we are grateful for everything that you do to help us because, trust me, with just us two here, we would not get this far without all the individual little actions that each of you are doing to promote the show and let people know that that we've got good stuff. And I'd like to give a particular shout out to the Kits and Cubs who took it upon themselves to communicate with Mr. Tom Lukasik to ask him whether or not he would establish contact with us because somehow we had been blocked. And it seems that the lines of communication based on that have been reopened. So hopefully that will help us meet your request to have him as a guest on our show to be able to talk about everything that's going on in Alberta and his move to do democracy by being the first in line to present a potential referendum question under the new law and the other things that he's been doing also because he's been very much denouncing what's been going on with corrupt care and the UCP government even before all of this. So, and he is ideologically more on the conservative side of the spectrum. So we'd also like to have him on the show to show exactly that, even though Mr. Grizzly and I do identify as center or center left or a little more progressive, that we can have, and we've had this before, conversations with conservatives that are constructive on things that we actually do agree upon, and even constructive conversations on things we may disagree upon, because there are good conservatives, and we do need a very healthy, we'd like to say progressive conservative option, but however it would like to define itself, a healthy option that is run by sane people who actually have the best interest in Canada at heart, even though we might not agree with how we get there. There's no doubt that they actually do have the best interest of Canada at heart. There needs to be a solid, healthy, stable group like that. Because we do need a clash of ideas. That is good. Conflict in and of itself is not necessarily bad. Confrontation isn't necessarily bad if the result of it is something even better than all sides participating came in with. Conflict and confrontation can create the environment for that if the people in the environment are mature and responsible. Not necessarily a bad thing. So hopefully there will be more people like Mr. Lukasik. We saw Mr. Guthrie make some claims and then be booted from his caucus. But there are people out there. There are people out there who will do the right thing, even though we don't agree politically on everything when it comes to the basics. Not lying, not cheating, not stealing. Basic fundamentals of democracy. That we do agree. And Mr. Lukasik is that type of person. Not only is he that type of person, but he's a person who definitely walks his talk and puts his money where his mouth is on the subject. So we would consider it very much a huge privilege to have him on the show as a guest. And as you know, Kits and Cubs, you have been requesting it a lot. So we are working on that for you. So for those of you who did pitch in and help create a context where that could happen, thank you. Thank you so very much for everything that you did. That means the world to us, that you would vouch for us publicly like that. So my heart overflows with warm fuzzy for the love that you've shown and the care that you've shown by doing that, because you don't have to do that, right? And we didn't ask, but some of you took it upon yourselves to proactively do that. And well, that's love. That's love. So thank you. Thank you for the love. All right. I had put the coffee thing up there a bit because I thought it was still up there the entire time and it wasn't. So I'll just leave it there for a couple seconds more to give you a chance to scan it if you would. And as I move on, kids and cubs, because democracy is something that you do, remember there's a Quebec Liberal leadership race underway. Registration is already closed, but voting will take place from June 9th to the 14th with the results on July 14th. So please, if you are registered, do make sure that you follow through all the way and do vote. It's very important. If you will want to bring more attention to the corrupt care scandal, there is a fundraiser to help former AHS CEO Athana Metsalopoulos afford the legal fees that is required for her to go after the government for the wrongful dismissal case, in which there might be other information that comes out that could be damaging to the UCP government. We do need to shine some sunlight on that. So if you are able to make a donation to that legal fund, Save Athana, SaveAthana.com is where you go, and that'll bring you right there. Also, if you would like to put pen to paper and write a letter to your elected MP, asking them to do what is required to ensure that Canadian media produces news by Canadians, for Canadians, and owned by Canadians, that would be very helpful as well. And remember, when you're writing to your MP, it's free. You don't have to pay for the stamp. You just have to get the address. All right? Thank you so much for all that you're doing. Words of wisdom. You know what? My words of wisdom today are pretty simple. If there is going to be suckage, surrender to the fact that there is going to be suckage. And then choose the attitude with which you are going to allow said suckage to just wash over you. And then live your merry life. Those are my words of wisdom. All right, kids and cubs, it could be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. Really important. Right? Self-care always comes first. Now, it's time for the audience participation. On 3, can I please hear all of you simultaneously in your most beautiful and melodic voices say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock in 1, 2, 3. Oh my. Ooh. There's some harmony there too. I heard you in the back row. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. Now, kids and cubs, since we left with things a little heavy, I thought that a good certain amount of tales from the Royal Book of Cheesy dad jokes would do you some good. So, here we go. What do you call an avocado that is too ripe? Guacamole. What do you call pasta that can't hold its liquor? Really? A drunken noodle. Ah. That's all I got for you today, kids and cubs. As we give the royal wave, turn, 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 turn. Go out and have yourselves a most beaverific day.